This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast presented by ClutchPoints, powered by DraftKings. Like, follow, and subscribe, rate us, review us, all that other fun stuff. Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. That's how you support the movement. Bless us with the like, share with your friends, all that other fun stuff. Week 18. My name is Sheldon Alexander, and I'm joined by Matt Russell, sports betting professional and creator of The Window, available on Substack and wherever you get your podcasts. Mr. Russell, how are you feeling today as we get ready for the last week of the NFL season?
Yeah, that's a bit of a loaded question, and I think you know that. How am I feeling? Week 18 is like it's the perfect hangover holiday situation, right? It's like, yeah, the football teams are there, but maybe they went out with the boys and, hit up a Japanese barbecue place and got into a couple of bottles of sake last night.
Let's go.
Maybe they did that. Maybe I also did that. It's really, tough to say. So, we're sort of art mirror imitating life, or life imitating art here, treating week 18 here with a bit of a grain of salt, knowing that, like, I probably should have gone back and listened to last year's podcast on week 18, or I don't know, the previous 4 to that, where I don't know. Do I say each year that I love week 18, that I hate week 18? I think it just kind of depends on my vibe at that time. I don't know. Like this year, I'm kind of looking forward to it. Okay. And again, maybe that's been maybe people could be like, no, you love week 18 because we get to sort of parse out all these dumb market rating things with all these wacky lines. And I get to sort of explain to you like why this team is being rated like this or this team's being rated like that, when normally they wouldn't be rated like that at all because we've got like Trey Lance in our life this week, right? Like, so, when it comes to, again, sort of, the NFL is there, but it's not exactly firing on all cylinders. I think we can all kind of relate to that over the course of the holiday period. So feeling great, feeling excited about week 18, but also, grain of salt, man. Like, who knows what we're going to get out of some of these teams in week 18.
Yeah, this is the time of year where it's like, I don't know the days of the week. I don't even know what the date is. Like, is it the 31st? Is it 100%. The 28th? Is it I don't know what's going on. But there is stuff going on, including NFL, which means we're back here on this podcast to give you a pick to each and every game. And for the folks that are new to what we do here, as mentioned, I give you a pick to each and every game. And Matt comes in with the information and education on where the line was, where it is, where it could be heading into kickoff, which might be even more important this week more than others. I then come out on the other end with a much more informed pick. I try to play the role of the viewer. Sometimes Matt convinced me to change my pick, and other times I foolishly don't listen. But that's the joke. That's the bit. That's the show. The goal of said show is to win more than I lose. And let's just say it. We're on a roll here. 10-6 last week. We'll take it.
Let's go.
10-6 week, which followed 11-4-1 week, which followed the 9-7 week. So we're finishing up strong here in the regular season.
Don't let the kid get hot. Don't let the kid get hot.
Getting hot at the right time, kids. Let's go. 132, 119, and 5 on the season, which I will gladly take. The other thing I want to say about week 18, I'm going to be honest here. You're going to notice a bit of a trend here. Okay. The trend is going to be, I'm starting on the favorite in every game.
Yeah.
Not every game. Most games. And then talking my way out of it. Because as mentioned, this will be a week of who cares about this game and who's in Cancun mode. So there's some where I will give a lot of what I think about this game. And there will be other games where I'll be like, yeah, these guys are in Cancun. We will start, though, with the non-Cancun games, which begin on Saturday this week and not Sunday, not Thursday. No Thursday games, which I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm okay with that, to be honest. Not going to lie to you here.
Sure.
We start on Saturday with the Panthers at the Bucs. And this game is for all the Tostitos winners. Takes the NFC South, or does it? This is so weird. Because if the Bucs, what is it? The Bucs win, but then the Falcons win, then there's a three-way tie, and then the Panthers still make it, even though they lost to the Bucs. This is insane. We got to fix that. That's got to be fixed. That's just stupid. Right? First and foremost. Can we just say that? No.
But like fixed to like what?
I don't know.
Like
Something
if there's a
less
three-way
convoluted.
tie, there needs to be a tiebreaker. And like, I don't know. Yeah, like
my other question
I don't know what
is
you're supposed to do with it.
Less convoluted. And also I think I'm more mad because these are 3 loser teams. So maybe if this went the other way, like let's say they were tied, but they all had good records, I'd be like, oh, this is pretty cool. This is interesting. Because it's for loser teams at 9 or 8 and 9. It's like, okay, what are we doing here? But sorry, as I rein myself in here, I apologize. Off the rails early.
No.
We got the Panthers and the Bucs. Bucs favored by 2.5 points. The Bucs just win this game at home. Like this is just what this crappy division comes down to each and every year. It seems like there's ups, there's downs, there's peaks, there's valleys. And then at the end of the year, just like, oh, if the Bucs can win, they make the playoffs, they win the division. And here we are again. The Panthers offense is a tough watch. The Bucs offense is also a tough watch, but for different reasons. Baker and them are doing stuff, right? Like there's stuff happening. Just might not always be good stuff, right? Yes, it might be too much. I'm on the Bucs here just because I just feel like this is just what they do. This is what happens, but they'll button it all up and win a game at home against the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 2.5.
Yeah,
this is where I'm tricked though by the 2.5 versus 3.
Yeah. Especially a number that's come off of 3, right? Like it was 3. We had it. We had one of those 3-point spreads, right? And that's what we say all the time about why there aren't more of these 3-point spreads, because anytime something's +3, everybody's initial reaction is like, give me the +3, like gobble it up, right? Especially with a team. And I don't know if it's with the Panthers or it's more maybe against the Buccaneers, right? Because the reason to bet, sadly, on the Panthers here is because you want to bet against the Buccaneers, who, I've sort of talked about in the last couple of weeks, are a team that profiles like they're the New York Giants, right? It's like if you literally go into their advanced metrics, it's like, oh, there they are in like 27th place in like run defense EPA per play, and it's like, who's right there next to them? The Giants. And then you like swing to the offensive side of the ball, it's like, what's going on with their like EPA per play on like offensive dropbacks? It's like, oh yeah, saddled right in there at like 24th next to them is like the Giants. Anyway, so the point is like, if you were looking at the Buccaneers all throughout the second half of the season, where they basically have not covered a point spread, and you treated them like they were the Giants, you'd feel a lot better about fading the Buccaneers, right? Sure. Because you're not looking at the jersey names on the back and all of these players in this like wide receiver group and honestly skill position group as a whole and Baker and just kind of blindly going like, yeah, Buccaneers. And so they've gone through this entire back half of the season and just absolutely stunk it up. And so, again, it's not a bet on the Panthers. It's a bet against the Buccaneers for why you would want to take those points. But I think what people are going to be surprised to hear from me, because we've talked about, we've alluded to it over the course of the season, that I was on the Panthers before the season at the big number, the +400, +500 to win the division. I have that ticket in pocket. And one of the many reasons why the Falcons game on Monday night beating the Rams. Yeah. And speaking of teams that just absolutely blew it over the course of this season, right? The fact that like they can win this game on Sunday against the Saints and be in the tie for the division lead. I mean, just go back and look at some of the losses that the Falcons took and go like, if you guys had one more win, we would be looking at the Falcons and your boy Kirk Cousins and going like, wow, look at like the run that they've made to potentially win the division and potentially get in the playoffs. But because of this tiebreaker situation, it's just been like, yeah, you can get to the tiebreaker, but you're going to lose that tiebreaker. So it would be super perfect if that's where this thing ended, right? Where it was everybody at 8 and 9, 3-way tiebreaker. And honestly, I kind of think that's where we're going, not to spoil later with the pick, because I do think the Buccaneers are going to win this game because, and it's not, obviously, part of it is that I think they're going to win this game, but really more from a numbers perspective, right? So again, we don't have a week 19 look ahead line to give us a second data point on how the market is rating these teams right now. But just look back at it 2 weeks ago when these two teams met in Carolina. Now, Carolina wins the game by 3. You and I both know we're not going to judge everything by one game's output, right? Mm-hmm. That line was -3 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road at Carolina.
Yeah.
So again, like Is it valid that the Buccaneers rating keeps dropping as again they go and they lose outright to the Dolphins last week? Like, yeah, of course it is. But we're getting a shorter line here at home with Tampa than we were just required to bet 2 weeks ago when we were on Carolina +3. So being on Carolina +3 doesn't mean we have to be on Carolina +2.5 when the location is changed over to Tampa Bay. So I mean, just look back, like the Thursday night game against those Falcons, where the Buccaneers blow that game, but like they still had a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter. Like it's incredible that they botched these games. I just, again, so whether it's looking back at 2 weeks ago, the line there, or just kind of, parsing it out from a market rating perspective, either the Buccaneers are at their absolute bottom right now of their market rating, or the Panthers are at the absolute top of their market rating. Either one of those, like, yeah, you could sell me on the Buccaneers being like appropriately low rated. Like maybe we haven't found the bottom there, but there really isn't any reason to be backing the Panthers at a market rating if they are being given a ton of credit, which, again, you watch them every second week, right? We always talk about like the win-loss, win-loss, win-loss thing. And part of it is because they've been playing these home games and then they go on the road and they lose, and then they play at home and they win, they go on the road and they lose. And like, yeah, just because last week they played a bad game doesn't mean they can play a good game because of that back and forth nature of the way that they play. To me, it's a bigger deal that they're on the road. And like, that's not where I want to be backing the Carolina Panthers, not when I'm not getting at least a field goal. So if things get a little wonky, right? Like, if this was +3.5, we can have that conversation, right? Because it means that the market hasn't adjusted in the same way that it actually has here, which I think is an over adjustment. And so when it comes to this Panthers, the good news is, again, like I said about the Falcons win, is that I can just get out of this bet by parlaying the Buccaneers with the Saints and being like, okay, like that's the way in which that the Panthers ticket loses for the division. And if you put those two together, because obviously the Saints are an underdog, right? I'm getting like +300 on that.
Let's go.
So I've got a +4, right? I got a +400 ticket in pocket. I'll have the +300 parlay ticket in pocket. And either way, I'm going to profit on the Panthers because, listen, go back to the preseason podcast that you and I did talking about that bet with the Panthers. It was never really under the sort of assumption that the Panthers were going to just run away with the division. It was always like the value on this bet is such that like by week 18, you're going to be able to do something with this, right? Like it's probably, I think we probably even said these teams all could be 8 and 9. Like it was that sort of like the handicap was kind of perfect in that way. Cause it's like, if you could just get to 8 wins, I think you can win this division. And like, that's what happened. And so now you get this opportunity to secure a profit on that bet, and like that's the whole point. And so if I can secure a 200% profit on a bet that I made 4 months ago, then like I'm gonna do that. And part of it is obviously along the lines of the handicap here, where it's like, yeah, I just kind of think the Buccaneers are going to win this game, and I think there's value on them at -2.5. So that really sort of accentuates the idea of, all right, like just get out of this bet, take your money and run.
Take the money and run. Wiser words may never have been said on this pod. Speaking of, I took the money and ran after betting on the San Francisco 49ers money line on Monday night.
Boom.
Sunday night. What was that? Sunday night?
Sunday night.
Don't know the days of the week.
Yeah.
There's football or there's not.
Tell us
football.
the day. What was the day? What was the number of the day? What was the date? What was the date on the calendar, Shell? Do it. Tell us. You have no idea.
Oh, wow. I have no
idea.
Clue.
Nobody has any idea.
No clue. Absolutely no idea. But those San Francisco 49ers, they come up with a crazy, crazy win and now set up the matchup that you actually put me on game maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, about how this was setting up that we could have a week 18 showdown for not only the NFC West, but for the entire NFC. And it's the Niners hosting the Seattle Seahawks. This line has been bouncing around. Who's the favorite? Pick 'em game, all this and that. And right now, as we record this pod on Wednesday morning, it's Seattle -1.5 against the San Francisco 49ers. I'm on the San Francisco 49ers. That might not surprise anybody listening to this pod, but I like to say that I normally will tell people when the bias is in and when there is no bias on this. And there's not bias here because I'll say this. Above all, I still don't trust Sam Darnold in any big game. I cannot be the dude who Bet on Sam Darnold and then sit there and watch the game and then be mad when he does Sam Darnold things. That's what I'll say first and foremost. But also, I will say the thing that this is a Shanahan institutional Robert Saleh. We're just going to get our guys ready to win this game at home. George Kittle should be back. I mean, all the things that the Niners did last week with no George Kittle, Trent Williams going down, in the first quarter early. They have no defensive guys. Yeah, it was the first play of the game. Yes. Oh, yeah. They have no defensive guys. Yeah. How many times, I know I'm going off on a tangent here and I'm off the rails here early, but how many times during that Niners game, I'm sitting there getting mad, like, sack him, yelling at the defense. And it's like, oh yeah, they're literally missing Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. Like, not even just like, okay, dudes, but arguably two of the best dudes at their position, right? In the entire league. And it's like, can't we get a stop? Why can't you get a stop? But somehow, some way, they get it done. Let McCaffrey cook, or Shanahan would be the guy that has all the counters. That's assuming that you're going to just sit on McCaffrey the whole time. I'm just on the Niners here. This is an institutional bet of what the San Francisco 49ers do as an operation. Give me the Niners to win. And if you're going to give me the 1.5, I'm in.
Sure. Yeah. So so the line move is interesting, right? Because it does open at Pick'em and then it drifts towards Seattle. And the Seattle thing's hilarious because, this season, we're not going to have the Lions. We're not going to have Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, right? And, whatever. These playoffs are just going to be absolutely ridiculous. Like, look at the Super Bowl odds right now. Do you know who the Super Bowl favorite is, Shell? Off the top of your head, or if you've seen it, then feel free to come clean. But do you know who the favorite for the Super Bowl is?
Is it the Seahawks or is it Denver?
It's the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, it's Sam Darnold and the Seattle Seahawks, right? Because by virtue of being the favorite in this game, they are, essentially the favorite to be the number one seed in the NFC. And we've talked obviously ad nauseum about like how important being the number one seed is in either conference, because you avoid these coin flips, because the NFL has turned into fantasy football, meaning that every week it's just, the projection in your fantasy league, right? It's like, this team's going to get 120 points and this other team is going to get 119. And it's like, okay, so we're just flipping a coin here. And then like one team wins by 70. And like, it's honestly based entirely on luck. Like, that's kind of where we're at here, where it's like, the Seahawks could be the number one seed and are like 52% likely to do so. Or counterpoint, they could also be like the number 5 seed and have to go on the road every week with Sam Darnold, at which point then what happens to their odds, right? Exactly. Meanwhile, like, you've got a team like the Chicago Bears down here at like 20-1, where you're like, I don't know, isn't that like a pretty decent bet? Like, as far as like anything is possible when it comes to this crazy league, right? Where we see the, again, speaking of the Monday night game, where we see the Rams locked in at the 6th seed and they're the second choice.
Yeah.
Right, the second choice is this Rams team that has to go on the road for 3 games. You're right, and so you're just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to make of this thing from a macro perspective, right? But like within this game, the Seahawks get this boost. And I don't know that I don't think it should be a boost off of going to Carolina and like winning that game and covering that game. I think there may be some concern, right, about whether Trent Williams is going to be able to play in this game. And that like, Kittle's, hopefully going to play, but like ankle wonky, how long is that going to necessarily last? There's a couple other, cues next to the name of Christian McCaffrey, who is just getting absolutely drilled with one of those, massage gun, right? Those Theragun things, where like that. Did you see that on the sideline? Like the athletic trainer was putting every like ounce of energy that he could into the back of Christian McCaffrey with one of those Theraguns. Like, like that's not a great sign, but it's kind of amazing. It's not kind of amazing. It's full blown amazing that Christian McCaffrey's made it to week 18 without having to miss any games this year. Like, speaking of luck, who would have seen that coming? So, like I've already got the bet right? I've got the plus 700 that we talked about 3 weeks ago. I said it, remember I said to you, I was like, what do you think based on these 2 or 3 things that need to happen, what the odds should be? And so I never felt like plus 700 was like an accurate reflection of what sort of was possible here. So if I want, I can then kind of take some off of, that with betting on Seattle here, or I can just say like, this is my bet and kind of letting it ride, right? And so like, I'm already kind of pot committed. And we always talk about, and we just referenced it with regards to the Panthers, like betting is not done in a vacuum. Right? Like if I'm holding a ticket because I got good value on a bet, whether it's on the Panthers from before the season started or the 49ers 3 weeks ago, or like Kyle Shanahan 20-1 to win coach of the year from before the season, which we have over at the window, or Christian McCaffrey to win offensive player of the year at 30-1 3 or 4 weeks ago. And now all of a sudden he's 2-1. Like I got enough invested in this game. Right. I already, we got the mini Jackson Smith and Jigba Christian McCaffrey battle for potentially offensive player of the year in this game. So like, there's enough happening for me that like, and we've given it out on this podcast. So I don't feel like it's a cop out to be like, well, like I'm on all this stuff. It's like, if you're listening to the podcast or if you're reading the stuff and listening to the stuff over at the window, like you're on one of these things, right? At some point you sort of came, into the show and like listened to the talk about the 49ers division at plus 700. You listen to the talk about McCaffrey or Shanahan and so on and so forth, right? So I'm going to be like you, man. Like, and I'm saying the way that I was last week on Sunday night against the Bears, where I'm just like, I don't care how they do it, man. Like you just got to win this game one way or another. And then like, we'll figure it out from there. And so, again, from a rating perspective, like the problem is, if you will, or the sort of the confusing part about this is the 49ers, because of their injury issues, right? Like we've talked about them in mid-season where it's like, well, they're being rated like a 40 out of 100. It's like, yeah, because they're running Mac Jones out there with Christian McCaffrey and nobody else. And so since those guys have come back and since they've had all these results, which is basically covering every point spread since then, they move up the ratings, right? Precipitously. And so you go like, is there going to be a point where maybe it's a little bit too far? They haven't bust through the top end of their even preseason range, right? And you and I talked about before the season, like we're not even really going to be sure how good this 49ers team is because of the schedule that they have. Now the schedule got a little bit harder than we thought it was going to, because that's just the nature of the NFL. And so like now you've got a game here where before the season started, we'd be like a home game against Seattle. Like they're going to be 3.5, 4-point favorites. It's like, oof, now they're like a home underdog here. So again, that's sort of a credit to how good Seattle's been this season. But like I think, even that game against the Rams, right? A lot of people coming out of that game going like, that's a really cool win for the Seahawks, but like, are we still really trusting Sam Darnold in de facto playoff games? And like, it is a de facto playoff game. Like, it's honestly downgrading the game by even calling it de facto. This is a playoff game.
It's massive. It's huge.
If you win this game, you advance past the first round.
Yeah.
It's quite literally the definition of a playoff game, like outside of the fact that it's being played on week 18, right? And so we saw what happened last year when Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings went on the road in the same exact deal where it's like, you could be the number 1 seed and play at home. Or if you lose this game, you are not going to be. And you are going to go on the road in the first round. And they end up, getting eliminated 7 days later. So, again, art imitating life or, whatever. Like
it's crazy he's in the same situation. That is insane.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And we're getting, like you said, 1.5 points with the 49ers. So, again, because I think there's some value on the 49ers, it's going to be a situation where I'm either going to just let it ride or like very, very tiny hedge to maybe just get my initial investment out of that bet and free roll all of those things that I just mentioned when it comes to division, coach of the year, offensive player of the year. I mean, obviously even Super Bowl, right? We just talked about the idea of the Seattle odds changing drastically. 49ers odds are going to change drastically one way or another, right? Like if you want to talk about high leverage, just look at that market, like snapshot that market before this game and then snapshot it after and see what happens to the 49ers odds and the Seahawks odds for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I can't wait for this game. The only thing that kind of makes me mad is the overall NFL greed of the 2 most important games. You're putting these teams on short rest to play on Saturday for television.
Yeah,
that's kind of insane.
Well, there's 3 though, right? There's 3 games. You could have put primetime spots.
This Niners game could have been at 4 p.m. on Sunday, just like this past Sunday when they had 2 games only, and one of them was absolute trash. So it was essentially one game by itself. right?
But you would have needed a fourth good game. Like, because we're going through this
I
by like good
know,
games. So
I know.
that there's
I'm
3
being
games.
salty, okay?
And if
Let
you
me
look
be
at it,
salty, okay?
of course. I thought about it too because I'm the type of nerd that is sitting there on Sunday, Sunday evening, going like, let me see if I can guess like which games are going to
Yeah,
be where. I do
yeah.
the same thing. Like I'll be doing the same thing this Sunday night for like wild card weekend, trying to guess which team's going to play on Monday, which team's going to play on Saturday, et cetera, et cetera. And I guessed it right because like it made the most sense relative to everything that else was going on, right? Because yeah, they're both on short week, but a short week, but it's the similar shortness, right? Where
Mhm.
Seattle had to fly back from Carolina while San Francisco was playing at home, and San Francisco doesn't have to travel because it's a home game, and right, and
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, that's pretty equal, and you can make that a 6-day type of deal. Meanwhile, like Baltimore and Pittsburgh, Baltimore obviously gets that one extra day. But like that might help Lamar Jackson come back, and like that's good for television. That's good for everybody involved. And I've never seen anything more obvious than putting Tampa and Carolina at the 4 o'clock spot on the Saturday. Like that is a textbook, like because it has to be played before Atlanta and New
Mhm.
Orleans to sort of make that game potentially interesting.
Yep.
And so yeah, like it had to be in that spot. I think this game has to be in that spot. Yeah, I agree with you, in part. Like it would be nice if it wasn't, a 6-day, short week type situation, but like there was just no other way to sort of do it, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm just salty. But you mentioned the aforementioned Ravens at Steelers. We're jumping ahead, right? Because again, we're doing the games
Yeah.
that matter first, right? So Sunday Night Football, Ravens, Steelers. This game for all the Tostitos. Ravens -3.5 favored in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. Winner wins the division and heads to the playoffs. Last week was the Derrick Henry game, 4 touchdowns, 216 yards rushing on the ground. Lamar Jackson didn't play. Something's going on there. This has been weird season for Lamar Jackson and company with the Ravens. I don't know what's going on. Story for another day. Meanwhile, the Steelers lost to Shador Sanders and they're like backup running back. And just a terrible offensive performance. No DK Metcalf. I think Aaron Rodgers had like 60 yards passing to a receiver last week. Just all out bad. On the one hand, this is what Mike Tomlin does. You lose to the terrible team, and you try and come back and do the rah-rah, we're home dogs to the good team. But I'm not rocking with that this time around.
Whoa!
Just not.
Twist.
I am on the Baltimore Ravens -3.5. I just think at the end of the day, if you line these two teams up, I'm on the Ravens. I think Ravens smash. I don't think that the Steelers offense is just not even good. Like I just think their offense just is so trash that I can't buy into it at all. Meanwhile, at least the Ravens, like they can do stuff. Lamar's got to be locked in at this point. Like they gotta. I'm just rolling with who is the better team in my mind, and that's the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean
3.5 is too much.
listen,
I know,
yeah,
but I'm still rolling with it.
yeah. Yeah, well, and that's the point, right? It's that like 3.5 indicates that is the indicator that the Ravens are the better team, right? And so
Correct.
what's expected of them here is, for one, we always have to do the thing, right? Is this a Lamar Jackson line or is this not? And I cite it frequently enough because he's frequently questionable for these games.
Correct.
Is that like over history?
Mm-hmm.
You can get excited with Snoop Huntley if you want, but like over the course of history, like when Lamar doesn't play, the rating for the Ravens plummets pretty significantly.
Yeah.
And then we see last week where like the rating didn't come down for Lamar being out.
That was crazy.
And maybe that was right. Like the line goes, he's doubtful all week, and I guess part of it is Jordan Love gets ruled out, right? But like he's doubtful all week. But the whole point is that like when we thought that Jordan Love might be playing, the line for that game went from like -3 to like -4.5, right? Which is like a moderate downgrade of the Ravens. It's not this like catastrophic. Oh, we're moving them from like a 66 down to like a 48 or whatever, right? Like that's the kind of rating drop that we often see. For Huntley, the rating went to like 55, 56. Then, of course, we see Jordan Love get ruled out. And so the line falls back right into place because you've got backup on backup, action, right? Backup on backup violence in Green Bay. But really, the reality was the violence was coming from Derrick Henry. So it didn't really matter who the quarterback was for the Ravens, right? Um, the announcers were talking about like Snoop Huntley like using his legs and stuff in certain spots, and it's just like, yeah, like okay, but he's not like a great runner here. Like it
Yeah.
had sort of some undertones that I didn't love in that circumstance,
Yeah.
because it's just
Oh
like
yeah. Yeah.
is he that much different of a runner than like Tyler Shuck? So
It's your regular Josh
the
Allen.
that's right. Well,
That would really
the
throw them for
sneak,
a loop. Anyways.
yeah, sneaky quick. So yeah, so if Lamar plays here, I feel like this is a Lamar plays number because the rating is back up to 63 instead of like the 55 or 56 that Huntley was kind of bringing to the table, right? And so maybe the market's comfortable with that because they think Lamar is going to play in this game. But again, man, last week they needed that game just as much as they do this week. And again, listen,
Yeah.
another week of healing might be a different story. I believe I saw that he was back at practice either yesterday or this morning. Or they just go, listen, the Ravens aren't the team we thought they were before the season started, right? Where they were up in like the high 60s, Super Bowl contender, yada, yada, yada. And that like the expectation of like a banged up Lamar, which again, we have seen all season long, really isn't that much different than Huntley because like both of them are probably going to run for like 25 to 30 yards instead of like Lamar potentially running for 80 to 90 yards. And the more we watch Lamar play this season, the more we kind of forget, as crazy as this might sound to people, and they might be like, what are you talking about? We remember. Like, do people remember how great of a runner Lamar Jackson was? And like what an absolute weapon like that dude was from anywhere on the field? Like could be running 45-yard runs in like without any effort or being touched at all, right? And it's like we have not seen that at all this season. And so my point here is like one way or another, whether it's Huntley and they're being rated as sort of this above average team kind of on the precipice of being a 60, or Jackson comes back and everybody goes, everything's going to be fine. Now we're finally going to see this Ravens team. Oh, they're going to give the ball to Derrick Henry after basically admitting that they botched it the week before. That's the funniest part about that whole deal, where it's like, I don't even know what like the human comp is. Like what, like what is in my life, like with my wife, like what's the scenario where I'm like super awesome a week later after like totally
bringing the flowers home.
Like, bring the flowers. Like I'm gonna get credit. They're getting credit for like this thing where it's like you should have done it before when you had the opportunity to win that game. So I just think that this Ravens team's been overrated all season long. And so again, I'm still sitting here looking at this going like they're still getting the same credit, whether it's with Huntley to a lesser degree or Jackson to this degree. And if Jackson is announced that, he's back and this line moves up to -4, -4.5, because, the market is again moving the rating of the Ravens up. I'm sorry. Like if you're going to tell me that they're like a 65 and they're on the same level as like the 49ers right now.
Yeah.
I'm betting against that beyond, and that's even before we get into like the Steelers element, which like the DK Metcalf thing sucks, like for the competitiveness of this game and for the potential for the Steelers to be able to move the ball on offense. But I do sort of like push back on the idea that like he was like the key to this offense. No. This wasn't a guy getting 10 targets. This is a guy who was stretching the field, and you had to sort of, have an eye on that sort of thing. But like in theory, maybe at home, the way that we've seen it a couple of times here, there's a couple of receivers on the Steelers that can get deep. Like as weird as it sort of is to say, like your boy MVS was a guy who was just stretching the field as recently as like 2 weeks ago. And it's like, you could maybe hit that guy on a crossing route for 40 yards down the field. Like that's the only thing that he's ever really done from like a skill set standpoint. So, I listen, I'm loath to sort of back Aaron Rodgers, but we haven't really had the scenario where there have been like 3.5 point home favorites with this sort of burr in their saddle type thing, the chip on their shoulder, if you will. And like that's the scenario in which that like I'm willing to bet on the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. And so, you can do the thing where it's like, well, in this matchup, like take the points. If you're getting 3 points, like whoever you're getting them with, take them. And listen, if this line was -3 for the Steelers, I'd take the Ravens. I wouldn't even really care who the quarterback
Yeah,
was. But
yeah.
like, it's impossible for me to be like, yeah, let me just like jump on, walk off the plank here with the Ravens, knowing what I know about the Ravens, and just not being willing to trust them unless the other team just willfully does not show up to tackle Derrick Henry. And if Derrick Henry was having some sort of 2,000-yard season where every week
Yeah,
teams were just like helpless, then that would be one thing. But
Mhm.
like, it's sort of the blowout thing that you and I talk about. If like a team gets, if there's a blowout in a game, it's probably because the losing team didn't show up. And so if Derrick Henry has 4 touchdowns in a game, it's probably because the defense did not show up. It wasn't because Derrick
Exactly.
Henry for 1 week got super powers, right? So I think the Steelers defense shows up. It's again familiar matchup. Even if Lamar plays, they done a pretty good job defending him, even when
Mhm.
he was at his absolute peak here. So again, I'm a little surprised, I guess, because of the Steelers losing to the Browns on the road. But like, we talk about all
That
that all the
happens.
time too. We're talking about a lot of stuff all the time, right? Like when you go to Cleveland, like you don't look good. Like
You
no
don't.
team
True.
ends up really looking good. And then you're sort of maybe valuable the next week because of how weird a game in Cleveland was. The one exception, ironically, was the San Francisco 49ers, who actually looked pretty good when they went to Cleveland. So yeah, I think you just got to take the points here on Sunday night and just kind of like see where the chips fall here.
It's definitely a crazy, crazy game, and it'll be a great way to wrap up the regular season and head into the playoffs for sure. But I'm rolling on Lamar here. I'm rolling with Lamar here and company, and that might
Oh
be my
boy.
famous last words for the season. But we move on to control room, just slowing things down here. We move on to the
Come on, guy.
Chargers at the Broncos. Broncos at home and laying 12.5 points. And we're into the part of the pod here where, again, I'm starting with laying the points and talking my way
Yep.
out of it. Broncos have won the AFC West first time since 2015. The Broncos, though, I don't really understand this team going forward because anything is really possible. They could go all the way to the Super Bowl. They could get bounced in their first playoff game. And I would be like, not really that surprised. But the Chargers,
Mm-hmm.
as we look at this game and a 12.5 point spread, their QB is banged up. Would they really still be caring about playing for seeding? Probably not. That's why you're seeing this line here. But
Mm-hmm.
they lost last week because of their kicker. Herbert is super banged up. He's running for his life with no O-line. This, I mean, you don't want to lay to 12.5 points, but the Broncos still playing for seeding. The Chargers not. Shouldn't play Herbert
Yeah,
in this game. I'm
they're
on the
not.
Broncos.
Yeah. Yeah, they're sitting everybody, right? Or they're sitting anybody sort of relevant. And number one being Herbert. The look ahead line for this was 2.5.
Let's go.
Right. So like the look ahead line was 2.5 because the idea was, well, we have to make sure like we're the standard or sort of the expectation is that, we have to be ready in case the Chargers win that game against Houston. The most accurate kicker in league history misses a short field goal and an extra point, and they lose by 4. Feels
Listen,
like those points would have been helpful, right?
just a
And
little.
beyond some of the other sort of sloppiness and really uncharacteristic defensive errors, right? Like the pass defense for the Chargers is the best thing that
Yeah.
they do. And the Texans came out in that first quarter and were like, we're just going to throw it over you, right? They were like the 16 seed in the NCAA tournament going like, we're just going to jack threes from 3 feet behind the arc. And like, you're going to have to kind of figure it out, beyond that if we hit them. So yeah, it's not complicated, right? Like the Herbert standard line or market rating, I should say, is they're always around a 60, right? Like high
Mhm.
50s. Obviously, with the offensive line being the way that it is, that has hurt their sort of room for advancement because each week, even though they win these games against Philadelphia, they get sacked 7 times, right? They have one good drive against the Chiefs, but somehow win that game to kill the Chiefs off. The market still goes like, all right, well, the next game you're playing, da da da. In this case, it was the Texans last week. And it's like, is that offensive line going to hold up against that defense? And it's like, I wouldn't bet on it. And yet they're a couple of kicks away from being kind of tied in that game. And then, a drop pass here or there from potentially, having a lead, despite the fact that they blew that, or not blew that, but like, well, they blew the coverages early on in that game. So obviously all these guys are sitting. And so you go like, okay, why are they all sitting? Because there's still room for improvement. And so this is the only sort of thing worth noting about this game, beyond the general involvement of Trey Lance, which we'll get to in 2 seconds. But like, I think the Chargers don't want to, they not only are not sitting guys, or excuse me, they are not only sitting guys, I think they're actively trying to lose this game. And the reason for that is, I don't know what the Chargers ceiling necessarily is as far as advancement. They could really use a playoff win though, right? The like
Yeah.
Justin Herbert deal, the Chargers in general could use a playoff win. Who are the teams that you absolutely do not want to meet in the playoffs if your offensive line is an absolute wreck, right?
Yeah.
It's Denver, it's Houston. Well, if the Chargers win this game, it knocks Denver out of the top seed. And so while the Chargers move up to the 6th spot, it moves Denver down to the 3 spot because Jacksonville is going to beat Tennessee and New England is going to beat, Miami. And so now the Chargers sitting there going like, yeah, we won this game, but now we got to go back to Denver in the cold and deal with that defensive line again. So like, even if they somehow did it, it's like, oh, that's not a matchup that we're looking for. But if they just do not win this game and they just go to the 7 seed and the Broncos go to the 1 seed, the 2 seeds the New England Patriots. Well, you can deal with the New England Patriots defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in comparison to Denver's defensive front and Houston's defense, and even the Jacksonville Jaguars defensive front. Yeah. So if again, it's all matchup centric, right? But if there's one team to sort of pick for out of that, where you're like, who do you want to play in the playoffs? The Chargers have this opportunity. Now, listen, even if they started, everybody doesn't guarantee that they were going to win the game, of course. Yeah. But just the idea of like, yo, if we win this game, and this isn't like advanced metrics. This is going onto the ESPN playoff machine and going, what happens if we win, and what happens if we lose, and just going like, yeah, the 5 seed would be great. But now you're hoping that like the Bills lose and the Texans lose in all of these games that you'll see are like touchdown, double-digit type favorites because it's one team trying and the other team not necessarily. So the Chargers sit back and they go, you know what? We'll take the 7 seed. Mm-hmm. We'll try the New England Patriots on the road in the first round. We are also obviously giving Justin Herbert a week off to get a little bit healthier or just avoid getting drilled 15 times a game the way that he is. And so like, it's obviously smart from that standpoint, but like, it's obvious that, or I shouldn't say obvious, but like, at least it's obvious to me that like they much prefer one specific matchup in the playoffs to try to quote unquote pull off that upset. And as a bettor, I'm way more interested in betting on the Chargers getting a few points in Foxborough than I would be in any of these other places where I just look at the matchup in the trenches and I go, no bleeping way. So beyond the fact that like they're just not playing their key players, they also have real no interest in sort of efforting some sort of miracle win. And so now you put yourself into a position where you're like, how many points are you going to score in this game?
Exactly. Shouts to Trey Lance.
Right? If you're just handing like if it's Trey Lance and Hassan Haskins or whatever his name is, right? Like the old Michigan running back from Jim Harbaugh's days in Ann Arbor, and you're just going to hand the ball off to him the whole time. How many points does Denver then need in order to cover this number, right? Like this is 20-6, 27-3, 27-10, 17-0. Like, this is going to be one of those games that you're not going to watch because it's one of, 7 games in the 4:00 window, where all of these games, we've buried all of these crappy games in these 2 sort of windows and just kind of hope one of them pops up and is sort of interesting. There's just, to me, there's no way this game is going to be interesting. And that's entirely by design for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, no, right there with you for sure. The Chargers, I mean, yeah, Herbert, if there's anyone that needs a bit of a break here, it's Justin Herbert, who's been running for his life for basically all season. Maybe after Christian.
Remember when Brandon Staley just played his guys before that one playoff and was it Mike Williams got hurt and then missed the playoff game and then they I think it was the year they blew the lead to the Jaguars. And I was just like, yeah, you know what? You could have used the 2 players that got injured last week when you went to Denver in week 18 and like tried to win a game that had, absolutely no business or no reflection on the standings. Jim Harbaugh's a lot smarter than Brandon Staley is when it comes to keeping his guys healthy. And it's not complicated. Like Justin Herbert's running around here with an oven mitt on his left hand. Like, let's keep him out of, harm's way for a week. And honestly, maybe for 2 weeks, because if there's one team that the Chargers can handle, it's maybe the Patriots defense.
It's like you segued perfectly into our next game, which just happens to be the Miami Dolphins taking on said New England Patriots. Patriots at home when favored by 10.5 points. Again, as just mentioned, starting with New England minus the 10.5 points. It needs to be talked out of it. I mean, if there's a way to be talked out of it, the Pats have already clinched their AFC East championship, but they still have a chance, obviously, at the 1 seed. Quinn Ewers, I want to give a shouts to because he almost won me fantasy championship last week, but he did his part. He did his part. Can't be mad at him.
Okay.
Everyone else, not so much. Story for another day. But
I hate to hear that. Hate to hear that for you, buddy.
But as we look at this game, it's kind of the same thing where you got one team that's going to be trying. Drake May, obviously, getting a lot of the MVP buzz. So, he'll at least get some work here where he's trying to ball out against a Miami Dolphins secondary that's not that good. But also, the Miami Dolphins, playing in the cold weather, we know that doesn't work well for them, even when it's Tua or not Tua. That just as an operation. Mike McDaniel doesn't even look like he knows how to dress in the cold weather. Just give me the Patriots here. It's one team that's trying, another team that's in Cancun mode. Let's go.
You know what tweet I saw this morning? The tweet saying that, like, if the job became available and if he became available, that the Cleveland Browns would be interested in Mike McDaniel for their head coaching position. And I honestly was like, is this New Year's Eve or is this April Fool's Day? Because, like, what are we talking about with regards to that potential?
I'm going to take us on a tangent here just for a second.
Please do.
This is what I dislike a lot about modern mainstream sports coverage. I was watching the Monday Night Football pregame show, and they had a walk-in shot of whatever Shula it is that is the defensive coordinator. Chris Shula, sure, for the LA Rams. And I'm like, how many coordinators get a walk-in shot with a graphic for a Monday Night Football game?
Yeah.
And it's not like you're coaching the defense of like the 86 Bears, right? Like, what are we doing here? Then on top of that, later on, they had an interview with my guy. He's standing on the field. They have a full 5-minute interview. I'm like, who is this guy's agent? And does he share the same agent as Peter Schrager? Because there's a work being done here,
bro.
Clearly, right? I'm like, what is
Sheldon's trying to bait me right now.
I know, and that's all I'll say. But my whole point was just what are we doing here? There's so many things that are so obvious that you're not even trying to pretend to me anymore, that you're just trying to shoehorn people in the jobs, leaking stories to get dudes to certain places. Come on. What are we doing here? Why would Mike McDaniel, hold on. Nobody thinks that Stefanski is a worse coach than Mike McDaniel. There's nobody that thinks
nobody does.
Nobody. Mike McDaniel doesn't even think that. It's just insane.
Yeah. And it's just let's get the coach of the team that can't play in the cold. Let's put him in Cleveland and see how that goes. Yeah. And it's just oh my God. I was like, what are you kidding me? What game were we talking about? Oh, yes. The Miami
Patriots, minus 10.5, hosting the Dolphins.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah. So there's a couple of corollaries here to week 18, right? For me, obviously, you mentioned the 1-2-3 Cancun concept, right? And the one thing that I sort of associate with that, or adjacent to that concept, is did you get your last win, right? Ooh. And so I actually, there's so many big point spreads, and obviously the point spreads are getting a little out of hand. This one listen, we talked about it last week with the Dolphins and the Buccaneers. It's like, this is Dolphins all day. Like, the Dolphins rating is so low. Quinn Ewers is not that bad. He is certainly not that much worse than Tua Tagovailoa. So, like, the rating for the Dolphins probably shouldn't, bottom out through the bottom side of their range. And so now, the Dolphins win that game. And so, like, their rating gets bumped up a little bit, but it's not back up into like the range that we sort of had prescribed for them over the course of this year. And so, like, there's value on the Dolphins in this game. I hate to sort of mention it because it becomes this thing where it's like, is this actually a thing that's happening or not? But, like, this game becomes meaningless as the Patriots go into halftime or look up at the scoreboard and they see that, no, the Chargers have not, in fact, scored any points yet today, or the Tennessee Titans are getting their doors blown off by the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? Yeah. And so it's easy to go like, well, if those two games are out of hand, then the Patriots are going to know and they're going to take their foot off the gas. So, like, they don't have to worry about winning or, like, sort of, and you get into this, like, nebulous area of, like, I don't really think that's how they play football, right? Like, I don't think that's how this thing works. And we talk ourselves into that concept because, like, maybe it looked like it happened one time. And it's like, well, yeah, they didn't need it in the second half and they started just running the football and it's like, or they took guys out, right? Yeah. I don't know if that's going to sort of happen here, but I do think that with all these, like, huge point spreads, for lack of a better term, like, there's got to be a few underdogs that sort of cover here. And the Dolphins have the ability to do that, right? And again, at this number at 10.5, I think the Dolphins are the side that needs to be the play. And again, maybe it's because of, like, the scoreboard watching. Maybe it's just the strict fact that the Dolphins have not been re-rated to the appropriate number. By the way, it could also be that the Patriots are still kind of getting too much credit in the market that, like, we don't know what happens if they play a team with a pulse last week, but they played the New York Jets. And, I was on the Patriots at minus 13.5, had it in contests, like, was pretty involved in it. First quarter goes by, I was like, this is the easiest money I've ever made in my life. Like, this Jets team is unefforting this game. And so it's just like, all right, May gets 5 touchdown passes. And, like, the funny thing is, until the Stafford fiasco from Monday, the MVP market didn't change off of May getting those 5 touchdown passes against the Jets. Because I think everybody was like, well, it's the Jets. Like, if this is 5 touchdown passes against literally anybody else, we would maybe make this more sort of, of a tighter deal. And then, of course, Stafford loses. And then now all of a sudden we might be, voting on an MVP out of the 6th seed in the NFC. And, like, that doesn't really sit well, I don't think, with anybody. So May's going to end up winning the MVP, I think. So all that is to say is that, like, number's too high. Possibility that the Patriots aren't, like, super locked in the second half, might be a little overrated in general. Again, we are maybe handing the ball to Derrick Henry a few times 2 weeks ago away from, a 2-game losing streak. And then this Jets game, what if they're playing a real team? Who knows what sort of happens there. Again, like, the market probably should come down on the Patriots here a little bit. It just kind of hasn't been given enough reason to. And so maybe this line should be like 8.5. Or 9.5, right? So I think you're getting some value here on the Dolphins, a game that could get a little weird in the second half for a Dolphins team that's still trying. But again, the caveat being, like, they did get their win last week. And so with some of these bad teams down the stretch, it's like we just get one more win to kind of feel better about ourselves. You saw it with, like, the Giants last week where it's like, yeah, they might have been trying to out-tank the Raiders. Well, like, if there's one thing you can't do, it's out-tank the Raiders.
You can't do it.
Again, there's some teams that are like, yeah, okay, well, at least we got one win here down the stretch. I'm worried that the Dolphins might have had their one win last week and maybe don't really care about this game, but the number is just too high. And if I have to take a side here, not even if I have to take a side, I'm telling you, I will be on the Miami Dolphins plus 10.5.
There we go. There's the gong. That means the pick has been switched to the Miami Dolphins. Yeah, there's just a lot of things here. And if you're the Patriots, you can't be too focused here on this Miami Dolphins game, like, one way or another, right? Like, you got bigger fish to fry at this point. I will move on, though, from this game.
Sorry, Sheldon.
I didn't even
just real quick. Like,
I thought you were reacting to bigger fish to fry, Miami Dolphins. I didn't even mean
listen, I'm not super alert enough to be able to lock into that. I just wanted to say one more thing. Like, the other element to this, it's beyond the fact that it's like, oh, you're not getting the number 1 seed and therefore, like, we don't have anything to play for. The other element is, like, we literally have to play next week. is why you would sort of pull the starters in that game, where it's like, all right, let's not get anybody hurt because they might play Saturday, right? There's four teams that are going to have to play on Saturday. And, maybe it'd be what? One of the two teams in the Saturday game, like if you were the NFL schedule maker, right? Like you take the loser of San Francisco and Seattle, you put that game on next Saturday against somebody, and then the winner, I guess, or the advancer of the Buccaneers Panthers deal, you would probably put them on Saturday.
Could they play each other?
Is there a possibility that the Patriots play on Saturday? I guess.
Anyways, no, disregard that.
That's a great point. No, you're totally right. They would absolutely play each other. So put that down for Saturday next week. That matches. And so on the AFC side, yeah, that's a perfect point. On the AFC side, there's got to be some sort of Saturday, let's say, night game. Because I think we can all agree the Saturday 4:00 game is going to be either in Carolina or Tampa Bay. That's the old Bill Simmons' cousin Sal, like shaky special, right? So, like the Patriots could play next Saturday night. And so if they're sitting there going like, well, looks like we're playing because Trey Lance hasn't scored a point yet, then yeah, Drake May's got to come out of that game. Some of these other guys got to come out of the game because the Patriots on a lower level have taken a fair amount of injuries and some off-field stuff to sort of hurt their depth here going forward. So, that's the other element, right? Like if this is a 17-point game, like they have to take a 17-point lead in this game. And even then, you then have to be worried about a backdoor touchdown from the Dolphins, right? To feel good about the Patriots, they got to take a 20 to 21-point lead. Well, like they don't really do that unless the other team is completely hapless. And we've shown that the Dolphins aren't completely hapless. I realize I'm just adding on more points to the thing that we already decided that we were going to do as far as betting on the Dolphins, but I just sort of think it needs to be kind of flushed out in full. Sorry, everybody.
No. I got you. We move on to the Colts, who are at the Texans. Texans laying 10.5 points at home. I am on the Colts, and I'll take the 10.5 points here. The Texans offense, it's really just about Texans offense. No matter what the defense is doing, right? For me to lay that many points with the team, I have to have faith in their offense to be able to put up points. And that's before you get into how really invested are they in this game, where you're dealing with seeding and there's different coaches. They're going to have different philosophies about the seeding, whether they care or don't care, what the matchups are going to be. Of course, they're going to be trying to win. But my point is, I just don't trust their offense enough to be laying double digits points against anybody, much less a Colts team that, the season hasn't gone the way that they've wanted it to, and I don't think Phillip Rivers is going to play in this game, although I wouldn't let Phillip Rivers play against the Texans. I wouldn't let him play against the Texans defense, to be honest. Let the man go out on a high.
Regard for his family. Yeah.
But yeah, give me the 10.5 points. I'll just take the points here and hope that they can keep it close and kind of end their season on a high note, because that's a tough season that the Colts just had.
Yeah, so obviously you look at the scenario, right? You bust out the playoff machine and you go, okay, what are the Texans playing for, right? And it's twofold. They still have a chance at winning the division. Yep. They're playing at the same time as the Jaguars, so like you can do the whole like scoreboard watching thing, yada yada yada, right? And so, okay, that's cool. You're trying to win for that purpose. The market sees that and they go, okay, Texans are trying to win. Jaguars are probably going to beat the Titans. Like, spoiler.
Correct.
At that point, if you're looking at the scoreboard, you go like, what are we still playing for here? Yeah. Well, this game's at 1:00. It is before the Houston game, and it is, I believe, before the Buffalo game, right? So again, those two teams have not played. And so if Buffalo wins, if Houston wins, and if, of course, we said that if LA wins, but we just decided that, Trey Lance might not score any points. Essentially, Houston, if they win this game, they're going to get that 5th seed. And so, as it often happens over the course of the season, the 5th seed becomes this sort of secondarily valuable thing because you're going on the road, but you're also going against the worst division winner. That worst division winner is often 8-9 or 9-8, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
it might be a little dicier because, like, the good news for either the Steelers or the Ravens or people interested in this playoffs being, interesting is those two teams aren't bad, and so they're
Mhm.
not great, but they're not bad
Yeah, yeah.
either. And so, you might be looking at like a 10-7 type deal. But you still rather that, I think, than like the idea of going to like New England or whatever. So
Yeah.
the point is that like the market is looking at the Texans and going, they're trying to win the division. Even if that bubble gets burst, the 5 seed is some valuable thing.
Mhm.
But again, like going to ball, let's put it this way, like again, a lot of it's branding, I guess. But like, would you rather go to Jacksonville or would you rather go to Baltimore?
I
I
know.
think
I'd
I
rather.
kind of rather, like, again, from a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
branding
I know what you're saying.
perspective,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I kind of
But
rather go
also
to
as an
Jacksonville, especially if I'm
indoor team too,
Houston.
I'd rather not deal with the
Yeah.
elements that could be dealt with in Baltimore.
Or a Texans team who also like has gone to Baltimore a handful of times recently, and
Mhm.
it's not gone in the playoffs, it's not gone particularly well. I think like they beat the hell out of the Ravens earlier this year, and the Ravens were like a practice squad unit. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, again, my point is not that they're not trying to win the game, obviously. It's more just like if the market is going to sort of treat this game like Texans really, really want it, really have to have it,
Mhm.
and are going to inflate the point spread
Mhm.
in such a way that you're paying a tax for betting on Houston in this situation.
Yeah.
Now, the other side of it, and the real X factor, the real variable in all of this, is your man's Riley Leonard.
Let's
Because that's
go.
what we're getting on Sunday, right?
Mhm.
PR did his thing. Man, did we ever have a great time with old Philbo,
What a
right?
time.
Like, what a treat. Get right down to the all 3 games having a fourth quarter interception. Like, just, I mean, they probably should have just played those Colts games in San Diego just to make everybody feel great about it. Antonio Gates probably should have come onto the field at some point. Um, so the Colts rating, the funniest thing about the Colts last week in their general market rating is that after they get eliminated in that game,
Mhm.
because Houston beats the Chargers, the line that was 6.5 all week, you would think would go up because you'd be like, well, the Colts don't care in this game because they've been eliminated. Da, 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 da. The market was like, no, we're still feeling the Colts
Yeah.
against the Jags, and that one closed 4. There's a 2.5 point line move after they got eliminated.
Just crazy.
Right. And it was a viable thing. Like, yeah, they ended up losing by 6, but if you watch the game, like they were
Yeah,
right
yeah.
in there with the
Yep.
Jags, very like could have won type of a deal. And so you just go, well, if the market predicts that the Colts are going to play with effort and care, and they do, but now Riley Leonard comes in, and we're just supposed to think that a team that sort of closed with a rating in like the 42, 43s last week.
Mhm.
The rating for the Colts here is 27 with Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty significant downgrade. Like they're just going to hang this kid out to dry and like
Yeah.
not care. And so again, it kind of comes down to matchups as well, where like the Colts offensive line's pretty good.
Mhm.
This isn't the Chargers offensive line where you go like, well, they're going to get absolutely mangled by the Texans, like pass rush. Colts, and again, you got Jonathan Taylor back there. He, by the way, is like 45 yards behind James Cook for the rushing title. It's a long shot, and Cook is going to play later on that day, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But like, they're going to be trying to help Jonathan Taylor get as many yards as he necessarily can. And again, you
Mhm.
saw some real no quit from that team last week. And so when you add those two things up, and this idea that like the Texans like are really dying to win this game, when in reality the most likely result is like, yeah, they get the 6th seed and they go to Jacksonville, a team that they're fully sort of, probably confident in beating. And it's like, yeah, the 6th seed might not be the worst thing
Yeah, yeah.
for
No,
the Houston
definitely.
Texans. And so, yeah, and you can, and again, like that requires them to like lose the game to fall into that spot, which would be a hell of a twist. But I will also remind everyone, beyond the fact that they scored those 2 touchdowns early against the Chargers and did nothing the rest of the way offensively, which is what you're referencing, they also almost lost to the Raiders and probably should have the
Yeah.
week before at home.
And it's the
So, like,
Raiders.
if you're telling me that Raiders outfit can come basically within a field goal of beating you, And you're going to tell me that the Colts, just because Riley Leonard is involved, who's going to throw the ball like 20 times, right? And he's going to do a lot of play action stuff, and he's going to he's going to move his legs more than Phillip Rivers. I mean, everybody would. You and I probably would. But like Riley Leonard's a mobile guy.
Yeah.
And so, he's probably known for 3 weeks that he's going to start in this game. And again, kid went to Duke and Notre Dame. He's a bright guy. And so like, I don't think there should be that much of a downgrade to Riley Leonard here. And maybe the Colts just absolutely tank this game and like they're not up for the game and they hang this kid out to dry. And the Texans play the best game that we've seen them play all year and yada yada yada. But like even on the offense defense side of things, right? Like the Texans run game, can that take advantage of the fact that DeForest Buckner's back out, right? He came back for that like 1 or 2 games and it's just like, sorry, I got to tap out. Like that's the only, to me, like as again, Wednesday morning, that's the only injury sort of report deal that we've got here. So yeah, we're talking about 10.5 points here between 2 like division rivals. That's why the league put these division rivals up against each other in week 18, right? That's why they went to that, whatever it was, 5 or 6 years ago, because these teams care about messing with the other team and just competing on the football field, which is the thing that you and I talk about all the time. And so yeah, the Colts have already indicated to me that they're still trying. They haven't got their last win, right? Unfortunately for them, like failing in those 3 games with Rivers, or coming up short, I should say, in those 3 games with Rivers, like they still, I think, try in this game. And so the market, I think, has made a pretty significant adjustment on the concept of Riley Leonard playing. But I think he can compete, and have 15 completions in this game. And Jonathan Taylor can run the ball okay. And this game's going to be a little bit closer because, again, I'm not super sure that the Texans are like dying to win this game and advance to the 5 seed just so they can go to Pittsburgh or Baltimore, when the alternative is probably just going to Jacksonville.
Yeah, yes. When you put it that way, it tends to make a lot of sense. And speaking of,
why wouldn't you just tank it if you're in Houston? Like, just take the 6 seed, man. Like, just take it. Like, it's a weird deal, man. That's the fun, and that's what we were talking about at the start of the pod, right? With like how insane the playoff setup is, where you have these teams in the 2 and 3 seed spots.
Yeah,
where you're like, I kind of prefer the Patriots over yada yada, or I kind of prefer like the Seahawks or the Bears to like the Rams, right? Who are in the 6th seed. Like, it's wild. It's super fun, but it provides some crazy potential opportunities here for some of these teams.
Definitely. And you mentioned the Jags. Jags are 12.5 point favorites at home to the Tennessee Titans. And you just mentioned what's on the line here for the Jags, who of course still need a win. And they're taking on the Texans, or the Titans, pardon me. And the Titans, I mean, they might want to win or try to win, or, they try, but they're not that good. And I'm going to lay the 12.5 points here with the Jags. It's a tough one because obviously the Titans do stuff, right? Like they try, they put up points, even when they're getting blown out, they're still trying to score at the end of the game. And Cam Ward is out here slinging it and all that fun stuff. But I'm still going to lay the points here with the Jags, just because I think that they need to still keep building wins and confidence and, be on a high note here as we head into the postseason.
Yeah, and I think, the Titans were brutal in that second half. And if that sounds like a clip that we've, inserted in from every other Titans game, it very well could be, because they are always brutal in the second half. And so I think the Jags are different from the Texans, right? Where it's like, all you have to do is win. And then everything becomes sort of open to you. Now, if the worst case scenario is you secure the 3 seed and you're at home, okay, like that's a pretty good worst case scenario. And, it also opens the opportunity for something weird to happen. And maybe you get the 2 seed, maybe you even get the number 1 seed if Trey Lance, plays like, somebody way better than Trey Lance. And so then you go, okay, am I paying a tax for the line that is like creeping and kind of getting out of hand? Well, it's the Tennessee Titans on the road against like a top team in the league. And so what did you think the point spread was going to be, right? Exactly. And so what do you think the rating is going to be? And so the Jags, I was really impressed with the Jags last week, going back to that Colts game. Like that was a spot, that was the quote hashtag spot, right? Where like you can fall in that spot the way the Lions did to the Vikings and the way that the Rams did to the Falcons. It's the same circumstance. Like I hate to sort of boil it down to kind of these like, cohorts of games, but like that's what it was. And they didn't do it. They won the game. They found a way to win the game when you kind of knew they weren't going to play to their best. And now they get to come home. Everybody is as excited as they've ever been in Duval. And you get to just kind of pound on this team that I felt like defensively quit last week against the Saints, and because they couldn't tackle anybody. I mean, God, was the Audric Estime is out here like running all over you, and then the Titans' offense is like, well, Cam Ward's just kind of like drop back, run around a bit, and kind of sling it because like there's absolutely no plan there either. And so for a Jacksonville team that's really good at turning teams over and have improved their pass rush like win rate and stuff over the course of the season, you go like this could be that game where Cam Ward turns the ball over a lot, and therefore this game gets out of hand. And if there was ever a team that was like, all right, like we played a couple of home games, we got our last win, right, against the Chiefs 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we can kind of hang our hat on that from like a pride perspective. And, whatever happens in week 18, 1, 2, 3 Cancun. And so when you're going up against a Jags team in Liam Cohen, who kind of a weird dude, but like feels like a guy who is totally cool with just drilling you in the fourth quarter and like racking up points and blowing your ass out. Like to me, this is that. And so again, from a tax perspective, like the Jags are a 60 out of 100. And again, from that is higher than their range has been all season long, but they've also played better over the course of the season, right?
They definitely
they keep impressing. And that's what I mean by going back to that Colts game. And so for them to be a 60, it's not like we're talking about a team like rated into like the 70s or whatever all of a sudden. And then the Titans, who guess what, have been down in the low 20s all season long, and it has been well deserved. And so like that's how we get to a line where we are at here. So I don't think that there's necessarily a tax, and you have a guy in Cohen who is like, man, I'm totally down with blowing out some team in my division, celebrating a division title, celebrating Trevor Lawrence comeback player of the year. Remember when I brought that up when he was like 90-1 3 or 4 weeks ago? I think he's like second choice. I don't know if he's going to win it. But like this seems like, party time for the Jags. This feels like that type of deal before they head into the playoffs. They don't have to worry about what anybody else does. They know we're going to play a home playoff game. What do you think? Maybe is that the 1 o'clock game on Sunday? Are we going to do that right now?
Oh,
no,
1,000%.
We won't get into that schedule. You think that's a 1 o'clock Sunday wild card? Yeah, that's probably right. So, I think that's kind of that blowout situation here where Tennessee got their win a couple of weeks ago. Feel really good about it. A couple of home games that fall apart late in that game last week against the Saints. Unfortunately for those of us who had the Titans, and now I think it's just we're going to get absolutely drilled here, probably like 42-14.
Yeah, this game exactly like our next game where I will lay the points as it's, Cancun time for the Jets. And they're taking on the Bills. The Bills, I mean, even if it's Mitch Trubisky, I'll lay the 7 points with the Buffalo Bills against the Jets, who probably even more so than the Titans, are in just Cancun mode.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, let's talk about the Bills listen, the Jets are whatever. Do we need to say a word about the Jets?
Cancun mode.
They have lost four straight games, I think it is, by 20 plus points. Like, what are we talking about here? What are we talking? Like, if we could, I guess it's a secret. Because this number, I've been 3 days. I've been like, I can't wait to talk about this with Sheldon. We could have started the pod with this, and we shouldn't have, because like we'd be 70 minutes into the podcast. You'd be like, you guys are still talking about the Bills and the Jets. Okay, so there is nothing that I thought more watching last Sunday's games than being like, Josh Allen needs a week off more than any human being I've ever met in my entire life. Facts. Right? The fact that like people are going like, should they have gone for 2? It's like the guy walked off the field and went into the X-ray room for the second week in a row. So you're going to play an extra quarter out here on a slippery field for like, for what purpose? On the hopes that the Patriots were going to lose to the Jets, or I guess they had already lost or already beat the Jets, or like lose next week to the Dolphins. I don't think so, man. Like we gotta finish this game now and
Yeah.
decide whether or not it's going to be a win or a loss, right? And so like this man needs a week off. So I think, well, I don't think, I know the betting market agrees with that concept because like the fact that this line, which has, gone down and down and down, has it even gotten a little bit lower? I just want to double check that real quick so that we know exactly what we're talking about here. Did I see this? No, maybe I didn't see this. I thought I saw it got down to even 6.5. I don't, as a Wednesday morning, nothing's been formally announced yet, but this rating, like Shell, where do you, it's everybody's, America's fastest growing game. If I told you that the Jets were rated as a 10 out of 100, which honestly might be a little high, but like, as you know, like our previous floor is 20. And so that's how bad things have gotten for the Jets, that they're a 10 and could be a 0 for all I know. Where do you think their Bills are currently rated with a line of -7? What is their rating
Oh,
with this line being
this line, it
-7?
would have to put them in like the 50s, no?
Dude,
40s?
it's 29. It's
Oh,
29.
29. Yes.
That's how bad they are. They are
Mitch
at
Trubisky's
home.
not that bad.
Well, and so that's kind of where I'm going with this. And the idea, so they're at home in the final game at, what is it, New Era Field, New Era Stadium. I'm going to say Rich
It's
Stadium.
the Ralph.
Back,
it's the Ralph.
For the OG, the Ralph. I don't love the Ralph. I'm old enough to remember Rich Stadium, so I'm calling it Rich Stadium.
Okay.
Maybe that again quite literally shows my age, but nevertheless, they're closing down Rich Stadium here, and so this idea that like they don't care about the result of the game doesn't work for me. So that means you're just going, okay, well, it's Josh Allen not playing and everybody else trying, or everybody who is playing is trying. Versus, again, some of these teams that are just like not really going to try. I think they run the plays with Mitch Trubisky. The other element, right? Again, the fun part that is week 18. James Cook comes into this, I believe it's 47 yards. He's got a 47-yard lead over Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor runs for, let's just say, 100 yards, right? Jonathan Taylor then has a 53-yard lead when the game starts for the Bills. James Cook has said it is important to him and his family that he wins the rushing title. I don't know if that's like a Dalvin Cook shout out. Like I go back in history and it's like, did Dalvin Cook miss out on a rushing title like one year because of some sort of deal? I don't know. Like is this like Rocky 8 where he's like trying to avenge the rushing title for his fallen brother who's not hurt or dead. He's just not in the league anymore. So it matters to James Cook and his family. So yeah, Josh Allen, I don't think he's not going to play in this game, but like, can the Bills just hand the ball off to James Cook like a bunch of times here? Now, the interesting thing in the James Cook specific scenario is James Cook is going to play in this game right up until the point that he gets the rushing title. So where do you line James Cook's rushing yards if you're in the prop game? If you're even willing to put a James Cook rushing yard prop up there, if you're a sports book. Because again, if we use the example of like Taylor getting 100 yards and Cook needs 53, well, as soon as he gets to 55, 56, 57, he's out of the game. So the under, if you were to line Cook at like the usual like 90.5 yards, seems like a really good bet. Mm-hmm. Now, we have to make that bet before Jonathan Taylor puts his final sort of tally up there. What if Jonathan Taylor runs for 200 yards? Well, now the bar is higher for James Cook. Now he has to run for 110 yards. But that even really only makes the Bills more valuable in this too, right? And so like, again, we're probably burying the lead here, which is obviously just sort of a general faith in Mitch Trubisky to be able to hand the ball off to Cook, maybe make some plays with his legs. Like I always like the backup quarterback who is like a 75% or 60% version of the starting quarterback. And like, that's Mitch Trubisky, right? He's like a mini version of Josh Allen from like a physical trait standpoint. It's not some like pocket passer. It's a guy who can like run all the plays that Josh Allen runs. And so, again, we can go back and be like, do we need to say anything more about the Jets? Fundamentally, it's like, are the Jets just going to allow all of this stuff to happen? And the answer is like, absolutely they are.
Yeah.
So like I guess in the end, I'm just waiting for the announcement on Josh Allen to not play to see if this goes further down to like 6.5.
Yeah.
6, just so that we can win on a touchdown victory by the Bills, who, again, even if it's a bunch of backups or whatever, losing to the Jets in the final game at, yes, Rich Stadium, that is unbecoming. That like cannot happen. So even if you wanted to kind of play it safe here and tease the Bills down to a pick 'em here, you're getting a deal on the Bills, who, again, I think with Trubisky, you can tell me they're a 40, like you sort of said. I think that's a fair rating with Trubisky. Like a 40 makes sense to me, which means this line should be upwards in the 10s, right? Like this Jets team does not care. They have lost by 20 plus points every week for the last like 4 or 5 weeks. So yeah, I think this doesn't make any sense to me as far as the value that we're getting here on the Bills. And then yes, and maybe Brady Cook comes out here and he's just slinging it around and AD Mitchell's making plays. Man, like that's not what we've seen over the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's super interesting because how bad can the Jets actually be? Tune in to find out.
Yeah,
We'll keep it going here. We switched to some NFC action here. We got the Lions at the Bears, and the Bears are at home, favored by 3 points. And really, I mean, the Lions, I don't know what the thoughts got to be with the Lions at this point, because the Lions are like their season just, what a salty, sad, shameful ending that was for the Lions season. And how do you bounce back and regroup to come back for this game? I don't know, but I'm on the Bears here and I will lay the 3 points with said Bears. That Lions performance, I know this is not how you want to lay money, right? But I just can't with the Lions. They're just, I'm hurt.
Yeah,
I'm hurt. They tried to ruin my Christmas day.
So they made my Christmas day retroactive to Monday, where we closed out 4 or 5 legs on the round robin underdog money line parlay for a 50-1 win.
So this was the highlight.
The highlight of my week.
Let me rewind that. The pick was made on the Vikings. When I say ruin my Christmas day, I mean by their performance. I tried to turn that game on.
Oh, just the hideousness.
That game. And that was just pathetic sadness. Like I immediately just went back to watching basketball.
Listen, if I'm betting against you, I'm looking for pathetic. I'm looking for the most pathetic. But I want to be disgusted by your general effort if I'm betting against you. Yeah, I'm like, fumble it more, Jared Goff. Hell yeah, I'm like cackling like a lunatic. Okay, so number one, I think for starters here, it's like, what are you going to get from the Lions? Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the idea of like, how do you pick yourself up off of that, and like I think that Lions performance on Christmas was the how do you pick yourself up off of the ground after the Steelers loss 4 days earlier, because that was essentially the bullet that went into the Lions, and then they just kind of like bled out or like died of sepsis from, you know what I mean? It's like, the reason you got knocked out, or you weren't dead because of the bullet, but you were dead because of the things that happened because you got shot. And that to me was that performance in Minnesota on the road, tough defense, all of that sort of thing. So, you reference it with like the 49ers, because you're a 49ers fan, and they have like obviously the institutional, whatever, to sort of have that level of faith in them. If the Lions are made up of anything that we have been told that the Lions are made up of, and this goes back to the final game of 3 seasons ago in Green Bay against Aaron Rodgers, putting, using a lot of bullet references here, but putting the bullet in the Aaron Rodgers Green Bay deal when the Lions had been knocked out of the playoffs earlier that day. The Lions came out that night on Sunday night, the final game of the season, and we're like, we are going to play our asses off here to knock this other team out. Now, they don't have that opportunity to sort of knock out the Bears, of course, in this game, but they have an opportunity for, the pride of the Lions, if you like some puns out there, but to show some pride after really, as you said, you're making the point sort of for me here, the disgusting performance that was on Christmas Day, national, viewership, et cetera, et cetera. So if the Lions have any pride, they're going to play a really good game against the Bears. Mm-hmm. who, by the way, just took their own sort of, we talk about jump and hug game wins, right? Like, whatever the option, Luther Burden lying in the end zone, like the lying in the end zone loss, right, is what the Bears just did last week.
Yeah.
And so the market is obviously kind of taxing this game because they're saying, well, the Bears need this game to, move up in the standings, and we're talking literally like 2 seed versus 3 seed type stuff, right? And so like, yeah, that matters because you 2 seed, you get the 7, you get the Packers who are like wounded, and the 3 seed, you get the Rams, and like nobody's interested in that. But like that's factored in, like that is built into this line that like, when would the Lions at any point be 3-point underdogs on the road to the Bears this season? Like it just hasn't happened. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, the Lions were getting credit as being this like mid 60s, low to mid 60s rated team, playoff contender, so on and so forth. And like we could look at that and be like, well, that's a bit much as far as like what their rating is concerned. But now with the Bears sort of stabilized at their rating, right? They are a solid low 60s team, right? 60, 61. It's like, you could surprise some things in the playoffs. You were definitively a division champion. You're like, you have earned it. This rating then puts the Lions at 55 out of 100. And so unless they're sitting a bunch of dudes, obviously if they were sitting Jared Goff, their rating would be like 20, the way some of these other teams who are sitting their quarterback. So we know they're not sitting Jared Goff unless we then see this line shoot up to like -10. And so as long as you have Jared Goff out there, and I imagine you're going to have the Jahmyr Gibbses of the world and all of these other guys out there, you're giving me 3 points against a team with, again, that is supposed to have this heart that the Lions have. Like they have been dining out on this concept of culture and institution and, passion and biting kneecaps and all that kind of thing. And you're just going to roll over against a division, against the division champion instead of going, hey, we are the best team in this division. We're not going to make the playoffs. It's just been that kind of year, but we're going to go into your place and we're going to knock you out. And again, this is a Bears team that was 10 points down with 5 minutes to go against a Packers team without Micah Parsons. And we've seen how the Packers have played, without him. And so again, like I hate to keep, punching holes in the Bears here because honestly, I'm probably going to end up with a Bears Super Bowl ticket at like 22-1 at some point. But I also might wait till after this week because I think they might lose this game to the Lions and therefore get sort of even less credit in the market. And I might be able to get a better price on the Bears. So I'm trying to give the Bears their due in all of this. But moreover, this line creeping up to 3 here, where you're getting a flat +3 with the Lions. I will dare the Lions to disappoint me because they don't show up. And I will sort of, again, I think last week's deal was because of the Steelers, game and that whole fiasco. I think they're going to play a really good game this week, man. And I think that they're capable. They're a capable 60, 65 quality team. I think they're going to play to that level. And I think you're talking about a game that probably should be a pick 'em, except for everybody thinks that the Bears, because they need to win this game and because the Lions got officially eliminated, are feeling like this is some sort of fait accompli for the Bears. It's not the same as these other teams that have to win or would like to win and play some of these other kind of garbage teams. Like, I think they're going to have to deal with the Lions, Dan Campbell, and like that team like in a real way this Sunday. I think that's just what the Lions are. Or at least that's what we've been told they've been.
That sound you hear, my friends, is the pick being switched. And this is why this podcast exists. For the reasons when I come on here with emotions, and I'm talking emotions, Matt comes in to calm me down, to bring some facts into this, some reality is into this, to, calm the tempers of the last thing that I saw. And the last thing that I saw was trying to convince my family that we should be watching this terrible football game just because I may have sprinkled a little something. There's a story for another day that I will not say on a microphone into a pod. Maybe I'll tell you after we stop recording. If you remind me of just like one of the funnier things of Christmas Day with the fam, and you realizing when someone in the room that's very unexpected that asks, hey, did you bet on this game? And then they're like, how much did you bet? And I'm like, whoa. Let's slow down here. Okay?
Whoa.
Let's
don't ask people here. That, people.
No, but it's family. So you think that it's cool, but it's like, no, it ain't that cool. Story for another day, though. Because this is not going where you think it's going. But we will move
when
on.
a family member does that, just like 10x it. Like if it's $150, just say like $1,500.
Right.
Or if it's $10, just be like $100. You know what I mean? Like just 10x it, just to screw with them. Because like I don't ask you how much you make at work. You know what I mean? I'm telling you how much you pulled last year, right? Like that's the same. At least it is for me, right? It's the same thing where it's like that's a really personal question, and so like I'll just tell them so like that they become more. First of all, they're stunned, but also like they become more invested in it. Or be like, how much you have on this? I'm like $10,000. Like what? Like yeah, that's what I do.
Merry Christmas. What?
Yeah. Now you're gonna understand why I put a fist through the mirror. And it's like, well, no, I don't actually have $10,000 on this game, but like I would like you to think that I do.
Right.
If I'm Aunt Ginny, you know.
I got nothing. I got
Aunt
nothing.
Ginny.
What am I supposed to say to that? Let's go to the Cardinals at the Rams. Rams are laying 7.5 points. Rams, obviously, again, there's some the Rams, I think, are locked into their spot, actually. No?
They're yes, the last spot. Yes, they are.
So they got nothing to play for here. The Cards, I mean, our guy, Jacoby Brissett, got to be trying to play for a job next year, right? He still got something to do here. 7.5 points. I'm going to take the 7.5 points here. Quite simply, though, I'm just going to be on Jacoby Brissett and the Cardinals here, as I think my guy is working for a job next year. And I also just think that, you know, as you mentioned throughout this pod, you want to end on some good vibes. And against Jimmy G, why not?
Well, and so that's the thing, buddy. Like, this is the craziest. So I'll tell you a little tale from the betting universe. So, you know, watching that game on Monday Night Football, and we have the round robin underdog money line parlay, right? So like, there's like a 15-1, you know, essentially what payout that if the Falcons win this game, we hit the 15-1. And so I go, well, I'd love to, if the Falcons can take a lead here, maybe into the second half, whatever, maybe they become the favorite, and I can kind of try to middle this, right? I'll take a couple of those 15 units and throw it over on the Rams side of things. Maybe if I can get Rams plus 3.5, like that'd be really cool. So I start, you know, scooting around to different books to see, all right, what are we at here? So it's like 14-0, and they're still like, you know, still a pick 'em because it's early enough. And like the Rams, you know, listen, they're a 7-point favorite. They're getting pretty significant, you know, respect, even in the live market, et cetera, et cetera. And I go, okay, like that's cool. And then I land on one sports book that still has the week 18 game, Cardinals at Rams up at 9.5, which was the look ahead line, which was very much an in-between line, right? With based on market ratings and the expectation, if the Rams have something to play for, the line, like some of these others, would be, you know, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a bunch of 12.5s, 13.5s, et cetera, right? Same kind of a matchup. And so I go, okay, like obviously that's just kind of this middle of the road. Like there's no more middle of the road line than like 9.5. Mm-hmm. But I also know that, or at least think that if the Rams lose this game, they get locked into the number 6 seed. Is there any coach that is more sort of known for sitting his starters in week 18 or, you know, the entire preseason than Sean McVay? Like he is the poster boy for sitting these dudes. And so I go, the closer the Falcons come to me being comfortable in them winning this game. So like it's I'm watching the money line for the Falcons. So then Bijan Robinson takes off for the 21 point lead off the 93-yard touchdown, right? And you're like, okay. Live line now for the Falcons has kind of got to the point where it's like the Falcons are minus 1,200 for this game. So there's like a 95% chance or whatever that they win this game. The game goes to halftime. They come out and I go, think about it this way, right? If you are McVay and you're going, we have a 5% chance to come back and win this game. We're going to sit all of our guys next week anyway. I'm like, why wouldn't you just start the sitting now? Right? Because it's like, is it worth the risk of getting one of your key guys injured as Matthew Stafford's getting thrown around like a rag doll back there with some of those sacks? You know, a guy with a bad 40-year-old guy with a bad back. You're like, let's see if we can try to make a comeback here. And yet he runs them out there. And I'm like, okay. And I think they like had a field goal early, and then there might have been another sort of stop, and it's like 21-3, and like whatever. And then all of a sudden they get the ball back, and he's still going back out there. I'm like, God. And he hit the long touchdown pass to Terrence Ferguson, and they're down 21-10. I'm like, oh God. They were one, fourth down miss away from, I think, calling off the dogs and having all those guys come off. They'd already lost Blake Corum to an injury, right? So it's like you kind of need one injury to sort of click in that it's like, yo, we should probably like sit everybody. But they then hit that 21 that touchdown to get to 21-10. So Falcons answer with a field goal. Falcons get the ball back. And of course, as we know, right, they try for yet another field goal. And Jared Verse blocks it and returns it for a touchdown, right? And of course, I'm immediately thinking, and thinking's probably not the right adjective for this, but like I'm thinking of when the Rams had that done to them that killed a point spread that we had on the Rams against the Eagles earlier on in the season, right? So I'm like, how is this happening again? Because at 17 points, I think the Rams call off the dogs. Yeah. But at 7 points with a full quarter left, the dogs are back out there. And of course, the Rams, because they are a horror movie villain, score another touchdown, tie the game with a couple minutes to go. And of course, we saw how the game ended up going. But my point is like, as it's 14-0 and 21-3, I'm like hitting Cardinals plus 9.5, 9.5, money line plus 425, like thinking like, yeah, the Falcons have got this. And if the Falcons have got this, then the Rams have to sit Nakua, have to sit Stafford, because every other team is doing it if they don't have any, like the Packers are doing it. We'll get to that. The Chargers are doing it. Everybody else has to do it. And he's done it every other year. And by the way, as we mentioned before, they have to play next week. Yeah. They also might be a candidate for a Saturday night game. And so I'm just sitting there going like, okay, like we're hitting, and then it gets really dicey. I'm like, oh my God, the Rams are going to come back and win this game. And I'm going to be sitting here with Cardinals plus 9.5 tickets when the Rams are going to have something to play for. And this line's going to go up to 12.5 and 13. And it's just going to suck for me because I'm going to be sitting there hoping the Cardinals at a bad number have to cover this game. The reason I'm telling you all this story is because I'm sitting here with all of this Cardinals plus 9.5 from this one book that was open on Monday. So like my judgment vis-a-vis everything with this game right now is being clouded because the other element is like, there's some like murmurs that the Rams are actually going to start, at the very least, start their guys. Yeah. And if it's going to be the preseason deal where like Stafford comes out and like maybe there's some incentive or something for some guys and they, take a drive or two or whatever, like that's going to complicate this line because, we've talked about the Bills. We've talked about the Chargers. We're going to talk about the Packers. Spoiler alert on that. What else do we have here is from like a quarterback not starting? I guess that's probably it as far as like good teams not starting their quarterbacks. All of those teams have been re-rated into the low 20s for this week and this week only, right? And so the Rams right now are to be a 7.5 point favorite. Like it's outside. The funny part is it's outside of their range, right? Because again, it's not 12.5. It's not 13.5 because the market is unconvinced that they would actually be this dumb to put their 50-year-old, I mean, it's quite the story, their 40-year-old quarterback out there for this game. And so, we've talked about this, right? The Rams are the highest rated team in the league. They're 74, 75. Like everybody loves the Rams, yada, 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 even after that loss against the Falcons. Well, to get to this number at say 7.5, their rating for this game is like 43. Mm-hmm. So it's not down to like the 20s, but it's definitely not, hey, the Rams are trying, like 70 out of 100 level Rams here. It is very much an in-between number. Yeah. It's like any injury, right? If Stafford was injured and questionable for this game, we'd be like, is this a Stafford line or is this a Jimmy G line? In this case, is it a Stafford, Nakua, Verse, so on and so forth, best team, Kyron Williams line, or is this a Jimmy G, Jordan Whittington, Ronnie Rivers line, right? Like Ronnie Rivers just shows up in week 18 every year and just plays for the Rams. And like, he might run for 100 yards. It's the Cardinals. That's the sort of deal here. But the point is like, I'm sitting here waiting for common sense to prevail and get this, number or this announcement and get this number into, the rating for the Rams down to where the Bills and the Chargers and all these other teams in the 20s, right? Like even the
Yeah.
high 20s puts me down to like, the funny thing is the Cardinals are so bad that like even a rating of 29 for the Rams still makes them a 2.5 point favorite.
Mhm. Yeah. No, for sure.
Right? It's like
Yeah.
the Jimmy G, Ronnie Rivers, Whittington Rams would be a 2.5 point favorite, I think, once that announcement comes down. So that I think is valuable for people to understand. And the idea that like if sanity prevails here, but you still like the Rams because the Cardinals are the Cardinals, you're going to be able to get like -2.5 here, maybe even lower than that. And so I'm just sitting here waiting for that so it can come back and get, all of that Rams -2.5 so they can get off of the +9.5, or at least, the vast majority of that +9.5. And so I can breathe through this game on Sunday. And so the overall point is if we do not get that announcement and it's like, yeah, Stafford's going to play and we're not sure how long and maybe for the first quarter and like da 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 da, I'm going to be sitting here with 7 of these games going on, being locked into Cardinals Rams, going like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like what is happening with this game? So that's where we're at with regards to this game. I realize that outside of the sort of market element to what happens if Stafford and company don't play, there's really not that much for you. But I had to tell you the story because that's the context within I'm looking at this game. Like this game has become the most important game of the week for me
Mhm.
because of the Rams just not admitting to society that like they should take the week off. Take the week off, gentlemen.
Right.
Take it off.
It sounds so simple, doesn't it? It sounds so simple. Our next game, we
Yeah.
got the Eagles, who are touchdown favorites at home to the Commanders. The Eagles, again, we're talking seeding here, but it gets interesting.
Mhm.
The Commanders, a tough season for them, but at least they kept it close on Christmas. Wasn't straight Cancun mode for them yet, but this game might be that. Uh, I don't know. This is a tough one, but I'm going to take the Eagles just because I feel like the Eagles, you need some positive vibes, don't you? Need going into the playoffs. Like, don't you need to show your offense can do something heading into the playoffs? At least make it like a real practice for your offense heading into the playoffs. I'm going to lay
Yeah.
the points here with the Eagles. I'm not going to like it. I'm not going to enjoy it, but I could also see the world in which, everyone's all happy.
Well, let's get the control room on it. Shell, as of this taping, the line has moved to Eagles -3.5.
Oh, so that means nobody's playing. What's going on right now? Does that mean that like it's been announced that
What
everyone
is
is out?
So yeah, if you want to look that up, I will quickly do, and even if you don't, that's fine. I will quickly look up sort of how I would rate the Eagles with this line being what it is. Because what I was going to say coming into this game or coming into this conversation is I don't understand this line. I don't understand why the Eagles, who again, as we've talked about, have been rated in the high, I shouldn't say high, but at least the mid to low 60s all season long. They win that game in Buffalo last week. Meanwhile, Washington, obviously, there's an element of like maybe Marcus Mariota comes back. That would boost the Commanders' rating up because
Okay.
like Josh Johnson on the road against the Philly defense doesn't sound any good. I would then say to you, like, if this move or the initial move, which was like, I think this line opened 8.5, which honestly I still think would be a little bit short based off of that. But it was like, yeah, Mariota might play, so 8.5 probably sounds about right. Okay, cool, fine. Because what did we have 2 weeks ago when these two teams played in Washington, right? I think it was like 6.5, something like that, 7. So okay, you move it over to Philly, whatever. So Philly has something to play for.
Yeah.
Like, what would you rather do? Play, you know, play the Rams at home or the Packers at home? Like, it doesn't make any sense that they would like sit all of the guys that they would sort of need to sit for this to make any sense. And so obviously we go first to the quarterback. And you go, all right, well, all of these teams sit in the quarterback. And then, there's only so, we always talk about this every week 18. It's like, there's only so many guys you could sit.
Yeah.
You got a roster, right? Like you don't have an unlimited amount of human beings. And so I guess the crazy thing or whatever you want to sort of say, because it's the Super Bowl MVP, does sitting Jalen Hurts really change that much? for the Eagles' power rating, the man didn't complete a pass in the second half last week. And it wasn't the first time that that's happened, and they've won anyway.
Yeah.
So if you can win games without completing a pass in the second half, how important is the quarterback, one who hasn't been all that psyched about running the football anyway?
Yeah.
How important could he sort of possibly be? And so again, we're going to need to know, all right, laundry list, like which one of these, how many of these teams or how many of these players, excuse me, from the Eagles are actually going to sit, and at what point does it just become honestly too much? Because you mentioned last week, right? Christmas Day, home game. The Commanders are going to put forth whoever's on the field is going to put forth their best effort to try to get the one more win.
Yeah.
They still got outgained by the Cowboys by like 200 yards. And the Cowboys were running the football on them with Javonte Williams for the first half of that game until Williams ends up getting hurt. And then they open it up, in the passing game, and Dak ends up throwing for, I think it was, 300 yards or whatever. Like, teams can do whatever they want against the Commanders' defense. And so, again, how many dudes have to be out of this game for this to really matter to me? Again, like, unless we have sort of the official list and it's like so many of the dudes, I realize like Tanner McKee is nobody's like idea of like a great time, but like Tanner McKee is gonna be trying to score some touchdowns. Tanner McKee's out here trying to get a job, you know. Same thing if it's Sam Howell. If there's one human being, knowing the small amount that we know about Sam Howell from a pro perspective, but the large amount that we know from Sam Howell from his college days, Sam Howell will try his bleeping hardest out there in a game. And so, like, I just look at it and I go, like, who has to not be like? If it's Saquon Barkley's out, okay. Tank Bigsby can't do that. Can't do this against the Commanders' defense.
I mean, what I'm seeing here just says.
Okay.
They're resting Hurts and most of their starters. That's where Eagles to rest Jalen Hurts and key starters against the Commanders is the latest thing that I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I need, yeah. Like, is it Quinyon Mitchell and Reed Blankenship and Cooper DeJean? Because it's like, okay, well, if the entire secondary is wiped out and we're running Sidney Brown and Jacorian Bennett and Kaylee Ringo out there, but like, if that's the case, then like, let's just bet the Commanders money line and move on. That's the interesting point about some of these, where it's one thing when like the Chargers sit all their guys and they go from, okay, well, they were going to be 3-point underdogs and now they're 12, 13-point underdogs. Like, the expectation was they were going to lose either way. These ones, like the Bills one is another example where it's like, yeah, they're still expected to win, but just not by as much.
Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer reports that the team is expected to rest quarterback Jalen Hurts and most other starters against Washington. Most other starters sounds like a lot. Still no names, still no.
Right.
So,
but Shell, you see my point, right? Like,
of course,
with that information and the line goes to 3.5, the Eagles are still expected to win.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the Bills and the Jets thing, right? It's like, yeah, like the line comes down, but like, you're still expected to beat the Jets. The Eagles are still expected to beat the Commanders. Yeah. And so if they're still expected to fundamentally win the game, then like, it's not that I don't care what the line is. It's that like, I would still be fine like laying the 3.5.
Yeah.
Or on the other side being like, well, if they're just officially not trying to win. That's the difference again between like trying to win the game and resting your starters. Right? Yeah, those two things mostly come together, but sometimes they aren't together.
But really, how much worse can their defense than can their offense look anyways?
That's what I'm saying. But like the quarterback thing, right? It's like, well, how do we know that like against the Commanders' god-awful defense that Tanner McKee and Tank Bigsby and like Britton Covey and Darius Cooper, can't do a little, and Grant Calcaterra can't do work against the Commanders? Because if the ideal was that they can't, then you're getting a hell of a deal on the Commanders money line if the Commanders are just going to like win the game because they're playing a B squad of the Eagles. And that's the sort of amazing. And again, maybe this line, by the time people listen to this line could crater even more, go down to Pick'em, go down to Commanders favored because it's like literally nobody on the Eagles are playing and all of that, right? So like,
Obviously,
we'll
we'll wait
see,
and see.
right?
Yeah.
we'll Yeah, it's a wait and see approach. It just, again, and honestly, like compared to, and again, maybe the Rams are the next thing to sort of drop here, but compared to the Rams, the Eagles have a million more things to play for.
Yeah.
Ironically, the idea of avoiding the Rams in the first round. So you just go like, yeah, of course the Rams are going to sit their starters. The Eagles, who have something to play for, are going to rest their starters. And again, maybe the Eagles look at the Bears and they go, well, the Bears are going to beat the Lions.
Mhm.
And it's like funny that you and I, or at least, yeah, you and I are like, well, maybe not so fast because we have some respect for the Lions, right? So it's
It's very
God, what an
interesting.
interesting situation. What an
Yeah.
interesting situation.
Lots of time,
Fun
as
live stuff for
mentioned.
everybody there.
Oh yeah, lots of time for that stuff to settle down as we get closer to actual game time and rosters start to get laid out more clearly. Our next game though, we got the Packers and the Vikings. Vikings favored by 6.5 points. You just talked about the Packers and we just talked about the different lines, right? And clearly, this line with the Vikings being favored by 6.5 tells us that the Packers will not be playing dudes. And I think the Vikings still have enough stuff to be playing for here that I'm going to lay the 6.5 points. Obviously, with so much uncertainty with their quarterback spot, you're going to be wanting to try here to wrap up the season. You got things like Brian Flores, who's obviously, I'm assuming, would be trying to get another job somewhere else. So, with all that said, you got one team that is invested in trying here, and they're only favored by less than a touchdown. So, I'm going to do that with the Vikings.
Yeah, I think that's right. Because again, this is one where, again, compared to the ones that we just talked about, right? Like if the Packers were fully healthy, everybody playing, it's similar to the Lions last week where they go to Minnesota and they're a road favorite. Would they be as
Yeah.
high as, that's the other thing about the Lions, by the way, like would the Packers, especially this version of the Packers, be as much of a favorite as the Lions were last week where they were 7.5 at Minnesota? Hell no, not even the most like fully healthy version of the Packers would they even be sort of 7.5. I shouldn't say fully healthy because like the Micah Parsons version of the Packers might be
Yeah.
7.5, but they would have probably had better success over the last couple of games, so the market would be higher on them. The point is that like unlike, at least as of right this second, unlike Philadelphia and Washington, the number of expected players to be out for this game, and that includes Malik Willis, right? Now we're down to the tune time here with
Yeah,
Clayton Tune. This has changed who is expected to win the game.
for sure.
And that to me is a more significant move to follow kind of blindly, if you will. Like we don't like blindly betting things or whatever.
Yeah,
But like
yeah,
if you're going to move the favorite from like -3 to, oh, it's now 6.5 on the other side, that's a pretty significant indication that like the Packers really do not care for this game. And so on the surface, even watching last week, like I was stoked that we got the win with the Vikings. But I'm sitting there going like, I expected better out of Max Brosmer, and I would love to bet against Max Brosmer next week. And then you look, and it's like, ooh, it's Max Brosner versus Clayton Tune. So I guess we're not betting against Max Brosner next week. So again, this is an expensive price to pay for Vikings -6.5,
Mhm.
but it is in tune with, pardon the pun, with where these other teams who are not starting, not just their starting quarterback, but a lot of their other starters, where that market rating goes for that team. So I don't think that there's like a deal here on the Packers because it's hard to, you're getting defective merchandise. Like it's great, cool. I'm getting a great price on a car, but like it doesn't start. So like how great of a deal could this possibly be? That's what you're getting here with the Packers. So like, yeah, this could easily be this like, sort of we reference to Trey Lance. Are the Packers going to score in this game? Well, if they
Exactly.
don't score, it's going to be hard to cover even 6.5 points. Right. So,
Mhm.
20-10, 20-9, something like that. Some turnovers from Clayton Tune. Like we're talking about short fields galore potentially. If the Vikings can turn Jared Goff over with the full effort that they had last week, if they have a full effort this week against Clayton Tune, I mean, he's going to be thrown to Bo Melton, like the whole time. Like that's where it falls apart, where it's like this isn't just the backup quarterback who's been studying. This isn't Riley Leonard. This is Clayton Tune, who is like pulled off the practice squad or whatever because of all the injuries to the Packers. Like, yeah, they have no interest in winning this game. The Vikings absolutely do. And listen, the Vikings could beat the Packers by 7 points, even if they had full rosters, just because that's the NFL. And like we see this kind of stuff all the time. We just watch the Falcons do it to the Rams. So yeah, like I don't mind laying the points here with the Vikings. Because again, I don't think you're getting some overrating on the Vikings. You're just getting the Packers uninterested. And the uninterested rating, the part-time or the whatever rating for these teams when they don't care is like 20. And so that's where I expect the Eagles rating to finish. That's where I expect the Rams, once they finally clue in, to finish. And, it's where we've got the Chargers. It's basically where we've got the Bills. The Bills a little bit different because they obviously do want to win, I think, for the whole Rich Stadium thing. There's no reason for the Packers to compete in this game.
Go Pack. No, I'm joking. I dislike the Packers as a Niners fan. We continue on, though, as we move to the Raiders, who are hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs are laying 5.5 points on the road. You mentioned teams that have no wants in terms of winning.
Desire.
That is the Raiders for sure. And yeah, I mean, my guy Olawadukin, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, he was kind of spicy. He was kind of spicy. He was doing some stuff. I'm gonna lay the 5.5 points here on the road against the Raiders team that we know is in Cancun mode, in tank mode, in all of the modes that do not involve trying to win.
Yeah, again, like not comfortable because if you're watching, a lot of Christmas Day action or Christmas general action where you're going, would love to fade this quarterback next week. And Chris Oladukin, who I don't even know if I watched the entire game. I'm still not entirely sure I know how to pronounce the name. I
mixed Olawakandi in with Olawadukin.
Yeah, you threw an extra syllable in there. I enjoyed it a great deal. I rather just sort of, like we talked about, do the Street Fighter 2 thing, like, and just kind of hope that that's actually his name. Oladukin. Yeah, so we were talking about the Raiders. What a just chef's kiss performance last week, where the Giants were like, we do not care for this game, but the Raiders were like, oh, you think you don't care for this game?
Right.
We super duper do not. And we're going to start our 34-year-old veteran quarterback who absolutely is trying his hardest. And that's how bad this guy is, that he can look like he is tanking when he is trying his hardest. And like, dog, like that is tough. And like he's not going to start this game. And I know I've said this before and it went poorly, so like I'm only saying it because Gino was that bad. Like I still am kind of terrified that like Kenny Pickett just plays a good game again. It's different because it's not on the road against Philly, right? It's like he's trying and Michael Mayer is trying. I think Ashley Genty's going to play and like they're trying. But I do sort of agree with you in the idea that like however it sort of is going to look, I don't think they want to go down and by losing to the Raiders this season. Now, whether they're capable of avoiding that fate is a different story. Speaking of guys that I would prefer just sat out this game, like I would prefer that if and I don't have some sort of like super love or affinity for Travis Kelce in any sort of not beyond just the respect for how good of a career that he's had. I would prefer that he didn't play in this game. Like, I don't need Travis Kelce out there running around against this, bleep show Raiders team, taking passes from Chris Oladukin. I kind of felt like last week, the sort of send off that he had, where he's like, he makes a couple of catches, waves goodbye to everybody, or, whatever, takes it all in. Like, that's a little bit more befitting of him. Or any sort of quote unquote Hall of Fame player, right? Everybody stays on too long. You can make the case, obviously, that Kelce stayed on too long. He was productive enough this year. I don't blame him for staying on this season. It's just never going to be perfect. I think he should probably pack it in. And honestly, I think like last week would have been sort of good enough if it were sort of not me, but like if it were up to me for him.
Yeah.
Did that change what the market does or the line for all of this? No, I think it really just sort of enforces that I don't really want anything to do with this game. And so that in a 16 game slate over the course of 2 days, where like this game on a 7 game 4 o'clock or 4:30, slate here, Can absolutely get buried. Does not need to be on a screen. Let me know how it goes. Like, not interested even in the Raiders money line as sort of like a what if things are just completely dog bleep out there and we can, we're getting a plus 220 or something on a money line for the Raiders. I don't even think I need to be sort of involved in that sort of situation either. So, I definitely a let me know how it goes type deal for this game.
No, sounds good for sure. We move on to our next game, which is the New York Giants hosting the Cowboys. Cowboys favored by 3.5 points. Cowboys with the dub on Christmas Day. Dak and Co. still trying to fill it up, put some points up on the board. Whereas even if the Giants are trying or not trying, they're just not that good in any facet of the game. But I also think that they are actively trying to lose. So add that all together. I think Dak incentivized to still keep trying here, still keep pushing. And on a high note, I'll lay the 3.5 points here with the Cowboys.
Yeah, I guess NFC East, of course, like just has to be weird about things. Um, I like the Cowboys in this game too, and part of that is kind of like we talked about, right? Did you get your win? And the Giants got their win.
Yeah.
They got out tanked by the Raiders. If convincingly beating a tanking Raiders is what makes people interested in the Giants here, I don't really agree with that. And where I can sort of understand people's position is it's the Cowboys defense. And because it's always been the Cowboys defense, which is what the reason why you'd bet against the Cowboys. And so for this line to move from 5.5 down to 5, down to 3.5, you have one of two things has to happen, right? Obviously, there has to be some sort of injury sit situation for Dallas. I mean, listen, if Dak Prescott's not playing in this game, as you know, the line would not look even remotely close to where this line opened or where it is now. Maybe we find out that there's like a CD Lamb who doesn't play or George Pickens who doesn't play. Listen, the Cowboys have played a few games this year without George Pickens, even when he was on the field. I don't think a Javonte Williams not playing really moves the needle here. So it's interest in the Giants that's moved this market, and it's the idea that the Giants are going to be able to move the ball against the Cowboys. Whereas last week they sat Andrew Thomas, and that was their sort of submission to the tank festival that was in Las Vegas, right? It was like an EDM festival, but for tanking. And so you and I have always said, like, yeah, if Andrew Thomas doesn't play for the Giants, then the Giants offense like falls apart like super, super quick.
Yeah.
Again, couldn't fall apart enough for the Raiders, who are giving up touchdowns on kick returns and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I just go, yeah, like this, again, they have their quarterback, or at least the quarterback for the next few years, as they hope that it works for Dart. I just don't see how the Giants have any interest in winning this game. Whereas, like, especially relative to the Cowboys, who traded away their first round pick this year.
Yeah.
And so winning these games for no other reason saves face for Jerry Jones, because instead of giving away the 13th pick, they gave away like the 18th pick or whatever it ends up sort of being, right? Like, it doesn't seem quite as bad as, because most of these teams are like, oh, we lose in the last week of the season, maybe we move up 4 spots in the draft, which I think is a valuable thing for teams to do, because all we have to do is wait 4 months and then all of a sudden see what it costs teams to move up in the draft. And you go, you could have moved up 4 spots just by losing in week 18, right? And so if you're the Giants and like, yeah, you sort of donate the Raiders the number 1 pick, or what, probably could be the number 1 pick. And then you just go like, yeah, like we'll take the 2nd or the 3rd or whatever pick. Like, that's going to be valuable to them. And so there's not really any reason to be taking the 7th pick or the 8th pick when, you're going to just beat the Cowboys here, and the Cowboys, aren't necessarily going to let them do it. So I don't really understand the line move, other than just kind of, again, the idea that like maybe the Cowboys defense is so bad, but that also implies that the Giants defense is going to be able to stop the Cowboys. And to me, this feels like another scenario where the Cowboys would like to just, throw the ball around, score a bunch of points, feel good about themselves at the end of the season, entertain Jerry, make him feel better about his trades, and just sort of move on. So I am, again, the point is I'm sort of trepidatious. I don't know if that's a word or not, but like, I've got some trepidatiousness about this game because of the line move, because I just don't agree with it. And that's always a little bit scary for me because normally I kind of understand why the line's moving where it's moving. Cowboys didn't cover that game last week on that sort of backdoor nonsense, but they certainly played well enough to cover it on the road against an NFC East foe, which, by the way, like Dak Prescott, is outstanding for his career against NFC East foes. So, yeah, as of right now, man, like to me, it's Cowboys or nothing. But if we wait longer, we might get -3 the way that this line is going.
Let's go. Let's go indeed. We got the Browns, who are in Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Bengals favored by 7.5 points. This is pretty simple to me with these two teams. Obviously, no playoffs intact, but we listened to Jamar Chase all last week talk about getting touchdowns and how important it was to him. We know Myles Garrett's going for the sack record. We get all that. But eventually, this just comes down to I don't think the Browns can put up enough points here. So with that said, I'm going to be on the Bengals. I'm going to lay 7.5 points, even though it might be too much. I dare you, Shedeur Sanders, to score 10 points.
Yeah. I want to find, I don't think I'm going to find it because it's super into the weeds, but maybe some book offers it in sort of a fun way. I would love to find a type of prop about when Myles Garrett will sack Joe Burrow, because it's going to happen. And I think if I'm Joe Burrow and I'm the Bengals, not that you like intentionally do it, but in the closest way to intentionality possible, I would let him sack me on the first play of this game. Get this thing over with. Get out of the way, give him the sack and be like, there you go, man. And you don't have him fiending like a rabid dog for 60 minutes and just throw. It's honestly like a lion. Throw him a steak. You know, I don't want hungry Myles Garrett chasing after me all game. The Browns defense is far better at home than they are on the road. There isn't any sort of discount or tax that you're paying because it's a meaningless game, and the market can go, we have the Bengals as an average team, we have the Browns as a below average team. That basically nets out to, on the road in Cincinnati, a -7.5 line. The line makes absolute sense. If you've watched Cincinnati, again, frustratingly, except for the home game against the Ravens, these last 4 or 5 weeks, I don't know how that game infuriates me. I had it in contests. I had it money line stuff. I had Joe Burrow in fantasy, all that stuff. But every other game, the Bengals have been really good. The Bengals have been an above average team, particularly when T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are both out there. They're vibing their face off. They're throwing passes to left tackles out there, right? Offensive linemen are splitting out, catching balls. Like, the vibes are actually pretty high. And like, we've gotten past 2 hours in this podcast before using the term vibes, I think. But like, week 18 can be very much just a vibes scene where it's like, whose vibes are better. And so when I just talked about the idea of like who gets their win, I don't think the Bengals are the team going like, we just want to get one more win here out of the last 5 games. I think they were like, we're better than this. We're playing at home against a division rival that we can beat the brakes off of if we so choose. Meanwhile, the Browns got their win last week. We talked earlier this season about like, list me the bad teams. Show me how they do after they get one of their wins, right? The 1-6 team, the 2-7 team. The week after that they get those wins, it's often bad. The Browns scored 1 touchdown last week, I believe it was. It was like a 50-yard pass to Harold Fannin, probably the best player on the team. Rookie, great building block for the future. He also hurt himself on that touchdown, and I don't think he's going to play in this game. So, like, you're literally taking the guy who basically scores every week, the lone touchdown for the Browns. I can't believe I haven't made more money betting on Harold Fannin touchdowns this year. But, like, I made a little, but, like, not nearly enough. So I don't think he plays, and you have this Bengals team against a Browns defense that, again, is so much better at home, is so much better against the very mediocre offenses, that against Burrow and like the way that this offense is cooking. I mean, if the NFL played a 30-game season or an 82-game season or something like that, because it wasn't football, like the Bengals would have a chance to like reel off like a run here and like make the playoffs by the end of an 82 game schedule. Unfortunately, it's football, so they only play 16, 17 games. And so, unfortunately for them, like all of this is coming too late. And again, they have their own self to blame for that loss to the Ravens, right? They could be right in the mix here with this ridiculous AFC North deal. So, yeah, I think they beat the hell out of the Browns. I do. I don't think the Browns do much. Like, you can cite me, obviously, the Bengals defense. Bengals defense has improved a little bit. I thought the Cardinals were going to score more last week. I had the Bengals in tease stuff because I was like, I'm worried about the Cardinals kind of backdooring this at the very least.
Yeah.
And I don't have that same worry about the Browns. I don't. So I think the Bengals win this thing pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I look at it that way too. I think it's just a matter of the Bengals going out on good vibes to back you up here on the vibes talk. Our last game, I don't know what the vibes are going to be here for this one, because if you're the Falcons, we talked about it earlier and kind of like what the Falcons have at stake here, which doesn't really involve them.
Yeah.
But, Kirk Cousins probably playing for a job as well. Like there's reasons why they want to win. Your boy Raheem Morris probably trying to keep his job as well. There's lots going on here. But you got the Falcons hosting the Saints as 3.5-point favorites. Right off the bat, I'll say I'm on the Saints, and that's mostly just because I've been riding the wave, the shook train for the last, I don't even know, second half of the season, we'll say. What another 300-yard game for him, just doing work. And I mean, the only thing I'll say about this game is the Falcons are not going to do the thing that everyone wants them to do, because that's not what the Falcons do. Right? Like everyone's going to be rooting for the Falcons to like, oh, if they win this, it'll be the craziest ending ever, blah, blah, blah. And everyone's going to be wanting them to do it. That's not what the Falcons do. When the Falcons need to disappoint you, they will disappoint you. I'm on the Saints.
Yeah. They tried their hardest on Monday, right? To disappoint in that second half.
Close.
Yeah.
Luka was inches away multiple times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Best receiver in the league, best receiver in his division. Somehow the other guy's favored for offensive player of the year. Sure. Makes total sense. Sorry. Total diatribe there. Well, listen, I already told you sort of how I'm going to play this, right? Where I'm going to play Buccaneers and Saints to offset, to guarantee profit off my Carolina Panthers deal. So all, grain of salt, yada, yada, yada. If the Panthers win on Saturday, I cash my ticket and this game no longer is relevant for me, right? Because I've done the thing that I needed to do, right? I cashed the Panthers division ticket. This game's meaningless. I think I lay it with the Falcons. I think I lay the points with the Falcons. Now it'll be interesting because it doesn't matter to either of the teams. And again, this is if the Buccaneers win. It doesn't matter to either of the teams, but like it matters. And I don't know if that moves the line at all. Like, we always think like, oh, if it doesn't matter, like their line's going to move. But it's like, well, they don't care one way or another. They're just going to play a football game against a division rival for sort of pride. And again, if the Panthers win this game, they're not even going to be in that three-way tie. So it's not like you get the sort of like we were three-way co-division champions, which is an amazing sort of thing to sort of pretend, to be proud of. So it's like, okay, like I don't think you'd be that stoked about that. I just look at it and I go like, again, so my other bias in all of this is like, I don't understand the Tyler Shuck thing. You and I talked about it last week, I think, or maybe I sort of discovered this sort of after the fact. We did do a pretty early podcast last week. Tyler Shuck's numbers are basically identical to Spencer Rattler's numbers.
Yeah,
they are. Like it's or at least going into last week's games, it was creepy how identical they were. And so you go Tyler Shuck. Oh, like people are talking about like offensive rookie of the year. It's like he's played. What is he on now? Like his ninth game or whatever. Like it's all very, it's all very
cool
nice
story
for the Saints. Yeah, well, and like nice for them that like if they don't want to, they don't have to try to reach desperately for a quarterback in the draft in like the middle to early like first round, like whatever
Yeah.
pick they're going to get, like 10th pick or whatever. Like that's nice for them because like that always kind of sucks when you're like 10th and you're like, well, if we get a quarterback, it's not the one everybody likes or the two or three that everybody likes, or we have to mortgage our future to move up or whatever. And so like, you know, I think he's earned the job for next year, which again, like is a really sort of nice thing for the Saints. It doesn't mean he's the best rookie of the offensive rookie of the year. Like slow down, people. So like they've had this really sort of easy-ish schedule, right? And so the market has kind of overrated them in a way that is, you know, making me interested in betting on Atlanta. Now again, if everything, you know, if Tampa wins, which again we've talked about, I think they're going to, then I'm definitely not going to have a stake. I'm not even going to have sort of the option to have a stake in this game. I'm just going to be like, well, let me know how it goes, right? And so it just is a matter of like, come Sunday morning, whatever the result of Saturday's games are, how much do I care to be involved in Saints Falcons at minus? You know, you've got 3.5 up there. That's certainly available in some spots, but like there's also a -3 if I want to bet on the Falcons. So I don't think even the market knows what to do with this team or with these teams. I do think, like, and as we saw on Monday night, I do think the Falcons are like not a good team as far as like our rating is concerned, but like a pretty good team. Like they're pretty good. They got a pretty good roster. They got maybe the best player in the league. And so, you know, I do like them at home against a team that I still don't think is very good. They've just shown some sort of positivity against, you know, the Jetses of the world, the Panthers when the Panthers aren't playing particularly well. You know, we watched the Falcons go into New Orleans as underdogs to the Saints 4 weeks ago. Falcons didn't have to do much to win that game, but they did, and they did so pretty handily. So, yeah, I mean, again, this is sort of an ask me on Sunday morning if you're like desperate to bet on this game, but I think in a vacuum, I would take the Falcons.
No, I got you. And in this game, I mean, regardless, you kind of hope that it does mean something just to give something else that's exciting on Sunday to matter. So that will be fun. And of course, between all of that, as you just mentioned, there will be time to, you know, see what's really going on, see what the picks are, see where you're leaning.
What is happening?
Where can the people find you between now and when these games kick off?
That's right. And it's worth mentioning, right? You and I talk about this, you know, every week, and I'm sure we've probably brought it up in the first week of the season, but like, I'm going to give you my opinion about every single game, but like, as the kids say, there are levels to this. And so some of these games, like I'm not even going to bet in the same way that some of these games you're not going to bet. And the impressive thing, and honestly, I'm kind of disappointed about it in a weird way because of like the science of it all. Like you've got this record where like, it's going to take what, a 1-15 week in order to not be 500. Like that's you know, and I always sort of go like, if we had gotten to the point and we were there throughout much of the season where you're sitting at 500, you're supposed to be at 500.
Yeah.
After 270 or whatever games, right?
Yeah.
Because like that's how math works.
That's how this works.
And so it's going to be impressive that even if you finish, whether it's 10 games above, 5 games above, whatever, that's going to be sort of nice, you know, in the end. But if you want to know like the games that I feel sort of strongest about, come over to the window at on the substack.com, Substack app. Just download it up, follow me, go to the search Matt Russell, the window, sports betting. You know, you're going to find it. You can go to Twitter at MRussAuthentic. Just everything that I do gets tweeted through there. And then you can decide based on the free stuff that's available over at Yahoo Sports on whether or not you're interested in getting deeper into the stuff we do over at the window. And so a lot of the stuff that we're doing right now is looking at the James Cook thing that I just mentioned. Why do we care about the James Cook thing? Well, we also have James Cook to lead the league in rushing yards. So like that's not just a prop that we're interested in. It is a hedge middle opportunity that we're interested in. Guess who's going to be betting Derrick Henry 2+ touchdowns this week? Me. Do I think Derrick Henry's going to score 2+ touchdowns? Not necessarily, but I've got Jonathan Taylor to lead the league league in rushing touchdowns, and he's 2 touchdowns ahead of Derrick Henry. And so we have to start making some moves with regards to our props and our futures and that sort of thing. We talked about it obviously with the Panthers stuff and the 49ers stuff. So, again, I realize it's the end of the season, but we're going to have 13 individual game previews for all the playoff games with player props, anytime touchdowns. It is super fun to watch every one of those games in the same way that we do on Mondays and Thursdays, where we've got, quote unquote, a lot going on from a betting perspective. We have obviously college football playoff that's kicking off any minute now, depending on when you're listening to this. And then, of course, all of the rest of that. Then, by the way, Shell, we're getting into March Madness soon enough. You and I have talked about it. All of the star power that's in college basketball right now is going to make for a really, really fun tournament. And then, of course, the Stanley Cup playoffs, which are absolutely like late night sweats personified. If you like betting, even if you don't really like hockey, that's just an absolute electric show come the springtime. So all of that is over at the window, over at Substack. So come on, hang out. We have a great time. We cash a 15-1 round robin underdog moneyline parlay every once in a while. We cash 25-1 mega parlays sometimes, but really fundamentally we make good individual bets and we have a good time doing it.
Yeah, I mean, good times had by all for sure. So make sure you head over to the Substack and search the window and follow Matt on the app formerly known as Twitter as well. My name is Sheldon Alexander. You can find me online on Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. As I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and of course YouTube. As always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya. And Happy New Year, kids.